Thank you for coming out today. At this point, I'd like to start the meeting of the Board of Supervisors for March 5th, 2019. And as usually, we will start our meeting with an invocation. Will be led this evening by Reverend Lauren Lobenhofer from Gum Spring United Methodist Church, and then followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Supervisor Ken Peterson. Please stand.
Let us bow our heads. Holy One, we thank you for this beautiful day and for signs of spring and new life breaking forth around us. We thank you for those who serve and lead to sustain this land and bring new life to this community. Guide the discussions and decisions here today that they may bring vitality and growth to all those who dwell in Goochland and to all of your creation. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on our agenda tonight is my comments. Some of you know we had a couple of hearings this evening that have been, the applicants have requested deferrals. We're going to deal with those deferrals when we go through the agenda in a few minutes. I also want to remind everybody about our town hall meetings that are coming up. The District 2 and 3 town hall meetings are March 13th at 7 p.m. at Central High School. The District 1 meeting will be Monday, March 18th at 7 p.m. at the Firehouse Station 4 in Haydensville 5 Road. And then District 4 and 5 will be March 27th at 7 p.m. at Hermitage Country Club. And so I hope you will come out. We usually, this time of year, we usually review our budget numbers, and it's a great opportunity for you to give us feedback on where we should focus our resources for the year. I also want to take a minute to congratulate the Goochland High School basketball team. They are playing tonight at 6 p.m. in the state semifinals at Godwin High School. So if you don't want to stay for our meeting, that's a good place to go instead of our meeting. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Podesky for his comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think I have the option to leave the meeting tonight, but go Bulldogs, wish them well. Just a few comments. Saturday, I had the pleasure to join Mr. Lumpkins, Mr. Peterson at the annual Fire and Rescue recognition event that they do for the volunteers and staff. Every year, this is a great honor to be invited to this presentation, to see the amount of volunteer service that we've had in this community. It just is pretty amazing, the amount of hours and years that individuals and generations of families have given to this community in public safety service. And so super proud to have an opportunity to be present there, and justly deserved. Our outgoing chief was recognized for his years of service there. And so it was an extremely nice event. I think we have another recognition for Chief coming up here shortly. But thank everyone there, as we do every day, for their service and commitment. The next item I had that I wanted to share today, 2 weeks ago, Mr. Stamey and myself had the opportunity to represent Goochland County at the annual Virginia Local Government Officials Winter Conference. And we were recognized with an award at that event. Throughout the year, our professional association sends out information requests to jurisdictions to try to gain best practices in different, whether it be policy or ordinance or procedure that we do on behalf of our citizens. This year, we were recognized as one of the top 10 jurisdictions in the Commonwealth for our participation with it. Mr. Stamey, I think you have the recognition there. You can display it like Vanna. So It's one of those things that it is an extra responsibility when the staff gets hit with these emails, and so I wanted to take some opportunity to just thank the staff for your response to that. We were recognized for our participation, and I know it's an extra duty, but we're doing some good things here and appreciate the time you take to share that with the rest of the jurisdictions in the Commonwealth. That's all I have today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Budesky. So the next item on the agenda is a citizen comment period. I'm going to head and kick it off. And I think Sheriff Agnew is going to introduce our
Yes, sir, I am, Mr. Chairman.
first speaker.
Mr. Alvarez, board members, Ms. McGee, Mr. Podesky, Ms. Piskewitz. It's my pleasure to introduce to you a young lady from Midlothian who contacted me by email several months after we had a tragic incident in which a very young infant was left in a hot car back in August. She's come up with what I think is a very compelling, very good, very low-tech, very easy way to bring attention to this problem, and hopefully will go a long ways towards solving it. So, Hannah, if you wish, this is Hannah Rudy. She's here with her parents, Jonathan and Michelle, and she's going to address you for a few moments.
Good afternoon. My name is Hannah Rudy. I'm 14 years old and an 8th grader at Midlothian Middle School. I'd like to thank Sheriff Agnew for inviting me here today, and I'm excited to be here to share about Baby In, Baby Out, a community initiative I started last summer to help parents and caregivers remember their precious children in the backseat. I'm partnering with local police and sheriff departments, businesses, and other organizations to distribute free hang tags that say Baby In and Baby Out on either side to save young lives. After twins died in my hometown of Chesterfield last May, I knew there was something I had to do. I started thinking and planning. One life lost in this tragic way is one too many. Last year, we lost 51 babies in America from heat stroke in cars, and I'm working hard so that there isn't one casualty in 2019. Sadly, 4 kids died in Virginia last year, including a 17-month-old boy right here in Goochland County on August 8th. I know so many of you in Goochland have been affected by the toddler's death. When I heard the news, my heart sank. I had been working on this community program for several weeks at that point, but I knew I needed to work harder and faster. The next day, I woke up and worked all day with a graphic designer and others to launch Baby In, Baby Out. 2 weeks later, I set up our first partnership with KidMed, a pediatric urgent care provider with 4 locations in Virginia. I'd like to show a brief video featuring Dr. Jeff Bennett, a pediatrician and owner of KidMed, and me.
Is it that one right there? Here it is.
Hi, I'm Hannah with Baby In, Baby Out. Today I'm with Dr. Bennett from KidMed. Dr. Bennett, tell us what happens when a baby is left in a hot car.
Well, babies can heat up really quickly, children can heat up really quickly, and it's unbelievable how hot a car can get in just a matter of minutes. So 80% of the heat increase can occur in the first 10 minutes, and it can go from 80 degrees up to about 20 degrees in really about a 10-minute period of time in that first 10 minutes, and then just as quickly, but not quite to that extent after that. But you really get to a really unlivable situation when babies heat up to about 107 degrees. Your body's normal thermostat lives pretty well and can compensate for a lot of things up to the 104 to 100, even 106 range. So little kids with a fever, we can get them down over a period of time, and no harm will come from that. But when it happens really quickly, your body can't compensate. So initially, it will compensate by bringing all your everything to the course, keep all your vital organs going, your heart, your brain, and your kidneys and things like that. But after about 107, it can no longer compensate, and cells start to die, and you go from heat exhaustion, confusion, and your mental status gets kind of woozy, and things that people have experienced when it gets a little too hot, to complete shutdown and cell death and heat stroke and even unfortunately death if a child is left in the car, even for as little as 10-minute period of time.
How can we prevent this issue from reoccurring?
Well, the most important thing is making a conscious effort to have that baby or child or pet out of the car. So what I always do, especially with when my children were little or when I have my pets in the car, is I leave my window down so that I have access to the lock and unlock before I even leave the car. So I leave it down, I get the kids and pets out of there, and then I go back and raise the window back up, because things happen, mechanical things happen. I've had my car lock when I haven't even touched the button, and I've had my child lock the door when I was not even in the car and they didn't know how to unlock it. So really important just to have access to the lock and unlock button, because you never know when a mechanical issue is going to occur, or when a child or a dog will put their hand on the lock button and lock it on their own.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Most important thing is just keep in mind that no matter how nice a day it seems like, if the sun's out, that car can heat really quickly, and it's really important to get your loved ones, your kids, your children, your babies, and your pets out of the car, because they can die quickly.
Be sure to pick up your baby and baby out hang tags at our first pickup location in KidMed.
As we heard from Dr. Bennett, heat is more dangerous to children than adults. Consider these facts. A child's body overheats 3 to 5 times faster than an adult's body. Heat stroke begins when the child's body reaches 104 degrees. When a child's temperature reaches 107 degrees, death can occur. A car can heat up to 20 degrees in 10 minutes. Cracking car windows or parking in the shade does not slow down the heating process. The two-sided hang tag we created served as a visual reminder for drivers to look back before exiting the car. We're also creating dash cards versions in Spanish at the request of Chesterfield County. I hope using the Baby In, Baby Out hang tag will become as easy as using your seatbelt. Today, in addition to KidMed, we have the following community partners on board: City of Richmond Police, Chesterfield County Police, Duck, North Carolina Police, and 3 Bon Secours Family Centers. The Powhatan Sheriff has also requested hang tags to distribute. I'm working to line up additional partnerships like car repair shops and daycares now, and even community groups like Urban Baby Beginnings and the Compass School in Virginia, Ohio, and Illinois. My long-term vision for Baby In, Baby Out includes partnering with a baby seat car brand such as Graco and a phone app or noise reminder with a heat sensor to alert parents. In April, I'm meeting with the executive director of the Da Vinci Center at Virginia Commonwealth University to talk about partnerships with senior engineering students to help explore a tech solution to prevent kids from dying in hot cars. Spreading the word starts locally. Having distribution points and partnerships across Virginia, then the East Coast, and one day America will save lives and put an end to this senseless tragedy. Even if you do not have children, watching out for hang tags and taking the time to look in cars in public parking lots are just a few ways you can make a difference. One glance in the back seat can save a life. For more information on Baby In, Baby Out, follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Baby In, Baby Out. Check out our website, www.babyinbabyout.org. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today on a topic very close to my heart. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Ms. Rudy?
Thank you. Yeah, very impressive.
Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Amazing.
Very
Thank you
impressive.
very much.
Mr. Chair, just so you know, she brought a 20-pound bag full of tags here, and we'll have them available at the sheriff's office, and we'll try to distribute some as well. But certainly anyone interested could pick one up at our office.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Okay, who wants to follow that? Anyone wishing to speak during the citizen comment period? I think we have somebody coming. no one, are you planning on speaking? Please state your name and address for our records.
Bruce Corrali, K-I-R-A-L-Y, 411 Regina Lane. We're just here just briefly to talk about the crossover at Creekmore Park. I know it's on the traffic engineer's study list, but this is one of the residents who's involved in an accident there. It has to do with Capital One employees trying to save 2 miles on the interstate of traffic when they let out from 4 to 6. So we're proposing to have, and you all have a copy of the information that we gave, including a map showing Capital One and the relationship to how they do their shortcut and so forth. But and we have a petition signed by 66 residents, and it affects about 130 people and about 45 homes, 50 homes. But there's a lot of aggression there because people are trying to do a little shortcut around all the traffic on 288, and instead of using the ramp, they come down West Creek Parkway and then turn right west on Patterson Avenue and then do the U-turn there. And we're just proposing to have a U-turn sign there that has a time from 4 to 6 p.m. And the engineer that I talked to said we might need another one farther down where River Road is, where it's poor visibility heading east, so that people are doing U-turn there they need to get going before these cars hit them. I just wanted Bill to speak just briefly about what happened.
My name is Bill Brownfield at 403 Regina Lane in Creekmore Park. Something very near and dear to me, I leave my subdivision now not between the hours of 4:30 and 6 because the traffic is unbelievably challenging. And if you happen to know that stretch of the road, we come down off of 288 and up the hill, and people are doing pretty well. One gentleman was doing enough that he hit me from the turning lane while I was in the median. So I've reached a point, and I actually have timed myself sitting there when I've had to go out between 4:30 and 6, and I've spent 90 seconds to 120 seconds trying to get across. Not because of traffic going west, but because of the U-turn, the enormous number. At times it can be 15, 20 cars lined up heading west on Patterson trying to do the U-turn. So we're hopeful that you can help support us with VDOT and see what we can do to perhaps get the U-turn sign for a couple of hours a day. Otherwise, we're not looking for a signal, just a little 2-hour no U-turn. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just add, we are in receipt of the letter and petition, and staff actually met with VDOT at 2 o'clock today, expressed your concerns further, and we'll be following up with you. Mr. Kilduff here is going to try to catch you on your way out and follow up with you as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good afternoon. My name is Neil Spoonhauer, and I live at 2986 Willow Trace Lane in Sandy Hook, Virginia. I just wanted to take a minute to thank the board for posting the videos of these live, the live stream and online. I have been watching them going back to 2018. I'm up to July now. And so I know it's a lot of work to do that. I know we've got some folks watching right now, so I thank you for doing that. One question I had, though, and I'm hoping that maybe we can come up with a solution, is you all asked some great questions of the folks, especially around the budget things that I'd love to know the answers to, but I don't know where to look. So I'm wondering if the board would consider posting maybe the takeaways in the comment sections, and then as those takeaways are answered, potentially put the answers there. I'm not sure where I can actually find the answers to these really good questions. I've noted that I've had some of the similar questions, but I don't know what the feedback loop is on that. So any information about that would be grateful. But thank you guys for doing that and having that transparency.
Thank you, Mr. Spoonhour. I believe we have a Q&A section on some topics. Maybe something we can...
Yeah, the minutes generally include the responses that are provided here. There are some times that we have takeaways that staff goes back and research that we will follow up with the board after. We can look at ways that we can do that and or summarize those responses in future meetings as well. So, thank you.
Anyone else? If not, I'm going to read a citizen comment that was sent to us just prior to the meeting. It's from Linda Moore. Linda's been suffering from some illnesses and not allowed to leave the house for fear of catching the flu or something like that. So my name is Linda Moore. I live at 2164 Prophet Road, Madigan Sabbath, Virginia. I hope someone will read these citizen comments for me at 3 p.m. I probably could have skipped that. I want to thank members of the Board of Supervisors and staff for taking the time to work with our team of concerned citizens working on understanding the rezoning process in Goochland County. We are thankful to Joanne Hunter. Oh, there she is. For explaining the process in terms that average citizen like me can understand. I attended the February 5th, 3 p.m. regular Board of Supervisors meeting in which Joanne presented zoning ordinance rewrite zoning districts to the board. I asked you to please offer a workshop to citizens before you vote on the rewrite. As a citizen, I need to understand how to follow the regulations. Please help me and my neighbors to be better informed citizens. So we've been working on the rewrite of the zoning ordinance for more than a year now. And as we get close to it, I believe we will hold some workshops to explain to folks, because it'll be in a new tool, and so it'll be a little different to do searches. So, but we will hold some workshops to make sure folks understand how to look for it in the future. Anyone else wanting to speak during citizen comment? If not, we'll move on to the next topic. And the next item on the agenda is a presentation of resolution of appreciation for Goochland County Fire Rescue Chief William McKay. Where's he hiding? Oh, there he is. If Mr. Minnick, who has the best radio voice, will read the...
I have a face for radio. All right, that's enough, Bob.
It's not that funny.
Yeah, it's not that funny. Goochland County Board of Supervisors, resolution of appreciation. Whereas Chief William McKay has served as Goochland County's Fire Rescue Chief for over 8 years, beginning his tenure on June 28, 2010. And whereas Chief McKay was instrumental in the creation of a local ordinance officially establishing the Fire Rescue Department to include the inception of cost recovery for ambulance transport in January 1, 2013. And whereas Chief McKay, in conjunction with the Board of Supervisors, the Medical Director, and the Virginia Office of Emergency Medical Services, established local EMS response time standards improving the quality of life in Goochland. And whereas Chief McKay strived to improve volunteer services, including recruitment and retention, implementation of the volunteer interview process, and supported career staffing increases to supplement volunteer coverage, expanding from 11 field providers in 2009 to a total of 37 firefighter positions in 2019. And whereas Chief McKay was instrumental in the design and implementation of the new 700, 800 megahertz radio system, the new Emergency Operations Center and Emergency Communications Center. And whereas Chief McKay oversaw capital investments and upgrades to fire rescue apparatus and equipment, including new staff cars, quick response vehicles, two brush trucks, 3 ambulances, 1 heavy rescue truck, fire hose nozzles, thermal imaging cameras, hydraulic rescue tool standardization, cardiac monitor defibrillators, and automated CPR equipment. And whereas Chief McKay oversaw the design, construction, and opening of the first county-built fire station, Fire Station 6 Haydensville, and supported improvement projects at stations around the county, including the renovation and addition of Fire Station 4 in Fife. And whereas during Chief McKay's tenure, the county's insurance services office rating saw improvement in all 3 dimensions that are evaluated, benefiting all residents. And whereas Chief McKay has regularly supported members in advanced training initiatives and promoted community involvement and started several department traditions. And whereas Chief McKay ended his formal service as Fire Rescue Chief on January 31st, 2019. Now therefore be it resolved that the Goochland County Board of Supervisors, on behalf of the citizens and staff, wishes to recognize and thank Chief William McKay for his service and leadership while serving as Goochland County's Fire Rescue Chief, and furthermore offer best wishes for him in the future.
Well, thank you very much. Oh, you want me to go to the microphone? I'm being directed to the microphone by Sandy. Pardon my back. Thank you very much for this recognition to the board and to the citizens and my coworkers here within the fire rescue community. 42 years ago, I started in this line of business. I've been a chief officer for over 15 years in 3 different fire rescue departments. I've obviously seen a lot. I didn't do all of these things all by myself. If you look across the room in the back there, we've got just a small representation of the men and women who are actively involved with Goochland County Fire Rescue, and there are literally hundreds that aren't here present today. Every single one of those individuals contributes to the success of the organization, and we couldn't do what we do. We couldn't have accomplished all of these things, as Mr. Alvarez outlaid, without the support of the county administration and the Board of Supervisors that we enjoy tremendous support from them, as well as our partners in the Sheriff's Office and in schools and other county departments. So thank you again for this recognition. I'm not leaving town any soon. I've got physical therapy that I go to, so that's not mental therapy, that's actual physical therapy. But I appreciate everything and look forward to transitioning to some degree of normalcy over the next short period. Thank you.
See if we also have another.
Supposed to open it here, or?
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
If it was Christmas, my wife would have given me grief about saving the paper.
Mr. Minnick, yes, could I have a motion?
That's your service award.
Yeah. I move we approve the resolution of appreciation for.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Vote carries.
Your beer mug.
I'm probably the only firefighter in the world that doesn't drink coffee, but maybe I'll learn now.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, the next item on the agenda is request to postpone agenda items and additions. We have 3 items today that were in our hearing agenda at 7 p.m. that we've had 2 deferral requests, and we also have 1 request that we are going to postpone because it's not quite ready. The first one is the Tuckahoe Bridge hearing And the request is to defer that hearing until June 4th at 7 p.m. Any discussion on those items?
Mr. Badesky, how does that fit in with our other items scheduled for that evening?
Mr. Chairman? June is actually a very good time frame. There was an original discussion about the April 16th meeting. There's been some consideration by the applicants. The June 4th meeting is actually far better than what the original consideration was.
Okay.
You have another case coming up that's also going to affect a May meeting. And so we, from a staff's perspective, favorably would support the June 4th consideration.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the deferral as requested.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any additional discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. So the application RZ 2018-00010 filed by Tuckahoe Bridge LLC is being deferred to June 4th, 2019. The next item is an application filed by Reed Marsh LLC, RZ 2018-00011. They have requested a deferral, and we're proposing that hearing be deferred to May 7th at 7 p.m. Any questions about that deferral request?
Same question for Mr. Badesky.
Thank you, Mr. President. Looking at the cases that we're projecting forward, May 7th would be an appropriate time that we could accommodate that request.
Okay, good, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, so when did that get updated? I see on our agenda, it talks about April 16th. That was a,
Yeah, after looking at the agenda for the 16th,
we took that one off too? Okay.
yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the deferral to the May meeting as requested.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. The last item on the agenda that we need to defer is the bus camera ordinance changes. We weren't quite ready to complete the steps required for that ordinance to go into effect. So we have, at this point, we're recommending that it also be moved to the June 4th, 2019 meeting. Again, we looked at what's on the agenda, and that seemed like a good spot. And the goal is to get this ordinance ready for the start of the next school year. Any discussion? Do we have a motion to defer the bus camera ordinance amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we defer the public hearing on the installation of the school bus cameras until, did you say
June 4th.
The June 4th.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions? Motion carries. Any other agenda items to consider moving or modifying? If not, the next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes, and we have minutes for February 5th and February 19th. Did everybody get a chance to read the minutes?
Yep.
Do we have a motion for approval?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the February 5th and February 19th, 2019 meeting minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion on a second. Any further comments? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Next item is reports. Mr. Nguyen will present the VDOT report for March.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Badesky, Marshall Nguyen with VDOT. Know you all have looked at the maintenance reports that was presented earlier. We did this past month record 31 work orders, and we completed 36 of the work orders. Some completed studies that were done this month, 250 westbound at 623, one-way sign was added there, and that sign has been installed. Route 6, a passing zone was reviewed near Beaver Dam Creek Road, which is down at 645 and 310 where the Department of Corrections is located. That was reviewed and wasn't warranted for any changes in that passing zone in that area. Route 6 at River Road, they completed some signs, some cross signs at that intersection to notify people there's a crossroads right there, and they added those signs. Those signs have been installed. Pending studies, traffic engineering is looking at the possibility of installing the plowable rumble strips on 522 through that corridor. Once we get consensus from traffic engineering, that will probably take place if they agree with it, and I'll be able to give you a schedule for that later on. We met last board meeting. We met with the folks at Luckstone, the Boscobel plan on Route 6. They have submitted a sign plan that is being reviewed by traffic engineering there. Once that's reviewed and approval is given, I'm sure the quarry will be installing those signs. 250 and Shannon Hill, Ms. Lascolette, we're looking at that again. I think the only other thing that we can do there is place those flashing stop signs on both legs of 250. That might help in some way, I'm not sure. Like we did at Fairgrounds Road, that flashing stop sign.
You're talking, put it on Shannon here, 605.
Put it on both sides, coming from 64 and coming from Fluvanna County, on both sides. We'll see how that works out. School bus
when
stop.
that might be done?
Pardon?
I'm sorry, excuse me. Do you know, have an estimate of when that might be done?
No, I don't. Once I get consensus from traffic engineering, I can contact you, okay? Somebody asked for a school bus stop ahead sign. We need to look at that on a one-by-one basis. Gentleman was here from the Creekmore community to discuss possibly putting a no U-turn sign at that crossover. Traffic engineering is looking at that. So once I get that information back, I will let you, Todd, and the citizens know if that can be accomplished. There was a request for safety review at 45 and Route 6. That's under review now. That'll probably be a possibility of adding extra signs, stop ahead signs, larger stop signs, and maybe a sign across Route 6 that delineate when they come to that T intersection.
Yeah,
Once we get that information and get the signs.
As long as people don't run into it.
Pardon?
No.
We can take care of that. The other one, Haydensville Fife, I know the rumble strips used to be at that location. I didn't realize that they were surface treated over. I believe a few years ago, I initiated putting those rumble strips in with traffic engineering. So I'm glad that, y'all let me know about that. There was another, I don't know what the question was about Perkinsville Church. That was another one I was involved in. We did put a crosswalk. We put crosswalk markings to the Perkinsville Church. So I'm not really understanding what they want. Because we added some, Perkinsville Church added some flashing signs on both sides, both legs of where the church is.
Yes.
So, and we did put a crosswalk that goes basically to the front door of the church.
Right.
So you know where that is. Projects, the normal project 288, 250 is on track. Hopefully we can jump it, boost it up a little bit, but it is on track for a January 2020 advertisement, which is a little less than a year from now. So making progress. And the River Road Patterson Avenue project is slated for, next year sometime as well. Other than that, y'all have any questions?
Questions for Mr. Nguyen?
Yeah.
Mr. Peterson?
Mr. Chair, thank you for that, Mr. Nguyen. I appreciate the update. At this point, I think spring is just around the corner.
Man, I hope so.
It's kind of dragging its feet a little bit, but eventually we'll drag it across. And with it comes two things that I know are near and dear to your heart. One is the baseball season, and one is the repaving, repaving and resurfacing activities.
Yes.
How far in advance do you know which roads will be resurfaced? Will you know the spring, summer, and fall resurfacing
I've
in
got-
advance, or?
I've got the schedule right now. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make a copy of all the resurfacing and give it to Todd for the town hall meetings.
Great, fantastic.
So that way we can get it split out by district and everything.
Fantastic.
So
Perfect.
I've got that information already.
Great. Thank you. That was my question. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Any other questions?
Real quick.
Thank you.
Real quick. I need to follow this a little more closely, but my memory tells me the date keeps moving around, but we're now looking at the roundabout, Fairground, Sandy Hook Road roundabout. It says on track to advertise February 2022. You know, but is that gonna get, that's pushing it out further than I was hoping.
I'm not real sure.
That's about where,
All right.
I think that's about right. That's a,
trying to bring two projects together. Your note says working to advance extension and roundabout projects simultaneously. That just means,
that's at 250 in 522, right?
No,
no,
the-
522 in Fairground, right up,
Okay,
right up the
okay.
street.
I'm getting the two mixed up, because one of them's in Louisa, one of them. I can verify that and get back with you, okay?
Okay. When something's advertised, how long, I know it probably varies, but what should the citizens expect in terms of?
So if it's advertised, say in January, and we get bids back in February, it's usually 3 months after the bids come back, when they start construction.
Okay.
It's usually 3 months of what I've seen in the past,
Thank you.
okay?
Anything else?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Minnick?
Yeah, hey, Marshall, just one, park at Centerville off of Hockett Road, is that gonna be on the maintenance schedule release that you'll be providing? I sent some pictures of, I think there was some potholes and maybe
Yeah,
some other surface stuff, but, yeah,
That'll be a maintenance thing for
Yep.
now. It wasn't, we entered all of the resurfacing in last year at this time. So what you gave me a couple of months ago, we're looking at for the following year.
following year. Okay.
Next year, next summer.
Not this summer.
Not this summer, no.
Okay.
Yeah,
There's just some questions may come at the
right,
town hall, so,
okay.
all right, thanks.
Ms.
Thanks.
Muscolet?
Just one other thing, Mr. Nguyen, the request to look at the right turn lane here on Route 6, I don't know if that's going to be held up because of possible construction with Marsh Reed, I don't know. But remember, you're on 522 and you're turning right to go west on 6, that turn there, not great.
Yeah, I
We
thought,
talked about that before, didn't we?
yeah, I thought that was a low shoulder in that area, and the area headquarters came back and filled that low shoulder up. That's not correct, or what? There was a low place where people kept turning that shorter
Yes.
and rutting out that shoulder is what they were
All right,
doing.
I'll look at it when I go home tonight.
Okay.
They did within the past 2 weeks come back in and
Okay, so I
and
just
fill
haven't
that.
turned that way. Okay,
That
thank you.
being said, as the rain comes and it settles, it does erode rather quickly, and I
Okay.
think some of the edge of the pavement may be close to eroding
Okay.
too. So.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Is that it? Mr. Nguyen, I want to thank you for, I had a request yesterday through Facebook about some trees that were and I think one tree had fallen on somebody's car, and
yeah.
you guys went out there and took care of it Monday.
Yes.
So that was great. Thank you, appreciate
Yeah,
it.
my maintenance manager, Ricky Cawthorn,
Yep.
met with Ms. Fender last Friday, and we were able to get the other trees cut. I mean, the tree that fell on her car was on private property, so
Right.
it wasn't a tree that was within our right of way. It's unfortunate. I'm sorry that she sustained damage to a vehicle, but I can understand why she's on edge about some other trees, and we did take care of those, okay?
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nope.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Kelly Parrish?
I was thinking about it. I didn't know if you could read.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Badesky. I'm Kelly Parrish, Director of Human Resources. On behalf of County Administration, I am pleased to present new staff in the County Attorney's Office, General Services, and Community Development. Callie, if you would please stand for us. Due to a resignation, Callie Jackson joined the County Attorney's Office on February 1st as the Assistant County Attorney. Previously, she served as the Assistant City Attorney for the City of Suffolk. We were happy to have you here. And Randy is actually already standing in the back there. Due to a resignation, Charles Shepard, AKA Randy, joined the General Services Department as a part-time groundskeeper on February 11th. Previously, he worked as a transportation operator with VDOT. Randy also owns and operates his family farm. Thanks for coming with us today.
Thank you.
And B, would you please stand? Last but not least, due to a promotion, we are happy to have Beatrice Hall join the community development staff as a customer service specialist. Bee began her employment on February 19th. Previously, she served in the United States Air Force and retired after 27 years. Thank you for your service and for being with us today.
Thank you.
And that concludes my new hire report.
Thank you, Ms. Parrish. Welcome all to Goochland. The next reports are the planning and development activity and accounts payable. Any questions on those?
No.
All right. I think I'm sorry. Go back to my app. So the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And Mr. Bresky, if you could take us through those items.
Chairman, I'm going to ask in advance that we pull one of the items out.
Okay, which item is that?
Courthouse, which one was it? I think it's number two.
No,
Number one.
Number one?
Oh, the purchase agreement, yeah. Good, yes.
Okay, I was going to request that that one be pulled out as well because of a conflict, so. Does everybody agree to pull that one off the agenda?
Sure.
Yeah. So the first item, the Goochland Courthouse purchase agreement will be pulled from the agenda. Mr. Budesky, can you tell us a little bit about all of them?
Well, I mean, it's not pulled from the, I mean, we're.
From the consent agenda, we'll
Consent
still
agenda.
vote
Okay.
vote on
Pulled
it.
out of the block.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just so everyone's clear, we're going to take a separate motion on item
Right.
number one on our consent, and items 2 through 8 may be considered as a block unless there's a further request to pull. So for those that are not familiar with our consent agenda items, these are items that the board has reviewed and were discussed at past opportunities. There are also actions that are required, often related to funding decisions and those kinds of things. But usually we don't spend too much time on these. Today's going to be a little different. I'm going to spend some deliberate time to go through each one of the items on the consent agenda. Since we pulled item number one, why don't I summarize that, and then we can, if you'd like to take an action on that one, you may. Item number one is a request for an authorization to execute a commercial real estate purchase agreement for the Goochland Cares building. It's the building that's actually located at 2948 River Road. What some may not know is Dr. Bain's office in the building where the clothes closet was located in the basement is owned today by Goochland Cares. And the county has long-term plans for expansion or replacement of the existing courthouse. This property became available for purchase. The county had a fair market appraisal conducted on the property. The assessment for the property is consistent with the fair market appraisal. And we are recommending for the board's consideration to purchase this particular building. at the fair market value of $450,000. Just so we're clear, Dr. Bain still plans to practice and has a lease in this building. And so it's a year-to-year lease on terms that has been agreed with Goochland Cares. We would assume that lease as we take over ownership. Don't want anyone who's Dr. Bain's patients to run scared. He plans to stay in business for a little bit longer. But we are working with, he will become a tenant of ours as we assume that lease. And so the county attorney's office is involved, and we're asking for your authority to execute this contract under terms agreed to by the county attorney and ultimately authorize my signature on this particular purchase.
Should we go ahead and just act on this one item, and then we can proceed with the rest of the agenda?
Makes sense.
Any discussion on the item? I am going to abstain from voting because I am on the board of Goochland Cares, so I think that would be a conflict for me. Mr. Lumpkins,
I'm going to abstain from voting and engaging in discussion as well because I have a conflict of interest because I have a partial interest in a nearby parcel.
any discussion on the item?
So it's our intent for Dr. Bain to remain under that lease that he has now, so that doesn't change. And what about the closed closet space?
The closed closet space has been vacated as they moved into their new building.
Right.
They had been allowing Habitat for Humanity to store some furniture in the basement. We've worked with them under reasonable terms to have that removed in the months to come, but the only actual lease that we are inheriting is from Dr. Bain's office.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, I will accept a motion.
Let's see, how many of us are left here?
A quorum.
Right, a quorum, exactly. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we authorize the execution of this real estate purchase of this previously owned Goochland Cares building.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Let me just clarify, if I may. The item also talks about a CIP transfer. Is that intended to be in your motion as well?
Absolutely. Yes, thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Do we need a roll call on this one?
Probably safer.
It's probably better. Would you call the roll?
Mr. Minnick?
Yes.
Ms. Lachelette?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Alvarez and Mr. Lumpkins have voiced
Abstain.
abstention?
Abstain, yes.
Group 3.
All right.
Okay.
Now,
Item number 2 on the consent agenda.
Okay, I will now go through items 2 through 8. If the board requests any consideration to pull off, we'll be glad to do so. There is also staff representing each of these items in the room that if you have any further detail or questions. I think most in the room know that we have been operating a court very successfully in the existing court facilities for many years. Recent conditions and ongoing security concerns have elevated the need to make some security improvements to the existing courthouse. This has been discussed with the board in the past. We actually did a competitive solicitation. Item number 2 is a recommendation to the board to authorize myself to execute an agreement with Caspin Construction LLC for $620,000 for the construction of the Goochland County Courthouse Security Screening Building, and appropriate the funds of $283,000 additional to the funds that have already been appropriated for this project. Item number 3 on the consent agenda. We are sharing this one on consent agenda. It's actually a policy, but we wanted to make sure all of our residents were aware of this particular policy. Right now, if you are on a public road in Goochland County, this may not mean much to you, but historically there were private roads that were not part of the state road maintenance system at all. These most likely predate 1990 in their development. We have worked staff with the county attorney to develop a policy that would allow consideration of road service districts to be created for particular roads throughout Goochland County that all of the neighbors that border that particular road would agree to give up right away and pay into an additional fund collected through a service district to ultimately bring those roads up to state road maintenance standards. What we have in the packet today is the adoption of that policy. That policy does require voluntary participation. There is no intent from this board to do any condemnation in this program. It's all to assist willing residents that are volunteering to pay and participate in this program. Other than this option, there is no alternative other than those individuals in those subdivisions or streets to actually sort of pull together and pull together their funds and bid a project. This would actually allow us to collect those funds over time in a service district, ultimately bid and manage the projects and assist with the road becoming part of the state maintenance system. Next item you have in your packet for consideration today, and this is relating, some of you may be aware that the treasurer has announced her resignation effective July 1. The board is required to take an action on how to fill that position. The item in the packet for you today is asking the Board of Supervisors to adopt a resolution to petition the Circuit Court to request that no special election be ordered to fill the office of County Treasurer. This would be filled at the November election based on this action in the package. Next item is an amendment to the 2019 Schools Capital Improvement Program. Schools took some action on this last week. This is a newer item for the board and wanted to share it. Dr. Rayleigh and staff is here should you have any questions. They're actually requesting to transfer existing funds from the 2019 Capital Improvement Fund. They had a telephone upgrade project. They want to move some of those funds to an emergency roof replacement over the special education wing. They've actually had to relocate some students to have this particular item addressed. And out of that same fund, stadium field upgrade project, they want to get a jump on that before the actual beginning of the next fiscal year. So that's their request to do this. These were projects, the one was more of an emergency purchase, the other was a planned project that they want to start before July 1. Next item you have for consideration today is the acceptance of an RSAF grant. This is a Rescue Squad Assistance Grant. Many of you, actually this week, we sent out a notice. We most recently placed a new ambulance into service. We have received a grant for what was 50% at the time for an additional ambulance to come into service. So they have actually allocated us a grant of $136,830 for the ambulance replacement. There is a match. The total project had gone up a little bit since the last ambulance was purchased. We're also requesting you to award the grant and appropriate an additional $141,515 from CIP reserves to meet this grant match requirement that will allow us to put another new ambulance into service for our residents. Next item that you have on your consent agenda today, and the reason this one is on your agenda is we actually have a local Goochland County code on any items over $2,500 on a refund must come to the board for consideration. We actually had a business in our community erroneously submit additional funds in the amount of $3,500. And this action today is actually authorizing us to refund that business that $3,500. We will be talking to the board about this policy and practice. This was clearly an overpayment, and this business is due the funds that were in overpayment. And so with your approval, we would be able to move forward on that. And the last item that we have for you today on consent agenda is approval of one of two annual rabies clinics, and this one's on Sunday, April 7th, 2019. We do these from 2 to 4 p.m., and any resident can come and bring your cat or dog. The fee is $10 for this service. It's actually a pretty quick in and out service that's offered to the residents, and with the board support, we would move forward with this rabies clinic on Sunday, April 7th from 2 to 4 p.m. Mr. Chairman, that's the remaining items on the consent agenda. I or staff are available to answer any additional questions you may have today.
Any questions on those items? Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have one. Excuse me. It has to do with item number 3, the creation of road service districts. And I believe in the board packet, it begins on page 86. And this is really just clarification and potentially some wordsmithing. As I understand this, Ms. Medeski, if you just could confirm this, as I look at the first paragraph here on, it says that about in the middle of the paragraph, projects will be considered in the order they're submitted and move forward to construction once all necessary funds have been collected. So as I understand this, this would create a district where the funds would be collected in advance before they proceed with the construction? Is that?
Yes, sir. There was some discussion that amongst the board in the past that we did not want to become the banker and advance funds for these projects. So the way this is written is the funds would be paid into a fund and over time. And so we don't anticipate that many of these projects, based on their size and scope, and they will differ depending on the size of the road and the scope of the project, may actually be a 5, 7, 10-year collection before any road construction would actually occur.
Okay. Excuse me. That being the case, then, excuse me, I'd like to maybe ask the county attorney if we, throughout the rest of this provision, it speaks to repayment and paying back as opposed to collecting in advance. So, for instance, I'll draw your attention just to a couple of examples, but it goes throughout. If you go down to step number 2 on page 86, and you go down to number 2, well, all the way at the bottom of the page, it says, you know, a 10-year payback or a 20-year payback. It seems like paying back would be if we extended the money in advance and then it's repaid as opposed to. And then there's a couple other examples. Step number 2, item number 3, which is on the next page, 87. There again, it talks about second line projected costs and for the project and the repayment schedules. So again, repayment. So if we are indeed going to collect in advance, I just suggest that we clean the language up to be consistent with that and say collected in advance as opposed to repaid. Is that?
Right, so it'd be like a 7-year or 10-year collection. as
Yes,
opposed to-
collection.
yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
That
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's much more appropriate.
Would we then need to consider this separately, or could we continue to take it as a group as amended with this one, or
You can continue to take it as a group and as
with
amended.
that cleanup? Okay, I just feel better if it was consistent throughout, that's all. So,
Yes, and
great.
so if the motion to approve these items includes this one as amended, that would be appropriate.
Okay, great, thank you. That's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Any other questions on any of these topics?
Well, Mr. Chairman, while we're on that, so what are we going to change on here?
Mr. Peterson had pointed out that this policy is intended to be
Right.
collect and then do the improvement. So if you go down, for instance, to the very last sentence,
Right.
it talks about a 7-year payback, 10-year payback, and 20-year payback. It's more appropriate for the word payback to be collection. You know,
I
'cause
totally
we're co-
agree and totally understand. My question is, we're being asked to approve something we don't know the final language?
That, if you're not comfortable with it, of course, we can make those changes before you could pass it along and make the changes first.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, again, we put this on, it is a policy document on consent to be able to share. I think we certainly understand the intent is only really cleaning up the tense of that particular component. And so unless there are other concerns, we will just make sure that it reads more of a collection versus a repayment basis.
Yeah, the other one would be the repayment. It should say, instead of
Collection.
repayment, it should say payment. The
So-
projected payment schedules and the payback should be collection.
Yes.
So it'd just be a global change wherever it
Right.
speaks to paying back, it would be collecting in advance. Just a global tense change throughout that policy. Is that?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, on that subject, the one question I have, and maybe it'll spin into a couple of questions, but Step 5 implementation. What I was looking for was to see that the citizens are kept informed of how things are going, and so that seems to require an annual review the project list on an annual basis, update the project cost estimate, provide an update to district participants of the status of available funding, and update them on a projected project start date. So that's going to happen annually. Do you envision just like a letter to the community, or is that probably how that's going to happen?
Yes, sir. That was our intent to do that. The one thing that we were cognizant of when we addressed this, that we weren't adding too many of these to manage into the process, and we do limit these to up to 2 a year. And so I don't, that review process and work effort wasn't going to be overly burdensome. And we know of a few that have interest right now, but I think from a workload standpoint, that was our intent to try to make those notifications. The other thing I didn't state earlier, I did refer to this as a policy, but the policy clearly outlines that if any service district was to be established, there would still have to be public hearings to adopt those kinds of things. So the policy sort of outlines how you can get into the public hearing process for consideration. That still would have to come through a public hearing process and then be adopted by this board.
And thank you. And so that step 5 implementation, what I read, and the part before that, seems like we're going to, keep everybody apprised. The last sentence, speaking of particular words and tense and stuff, if projected construction costs have increased, the payment schedule amount may be adjusted to ensure adequate project funds are collected by the end of the payment collection period. Is there any reason may shouldn't be shall? Because if the projected cost is increased and we need more money,
Certainly, there's other ways that you can extend terms versus increase the annual assessment. Those kinds of things could be considered.
Is that on the county's side unilaterally to decide that, to go from 7 to 10?
It would be a discussion we would have. You probably would have to amend the original adopted ordinance that authorized the service district to do so, but I think there are options that can be considered. If we say shall, it may enforce nothing but an increased assessment.
But if we don't increase the pay, we're going to have to amend the ordinance.
Correct. There is no intent for us to underwrite the costs of these projects.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this or the other items on the agenda?
When we're looking at a 7 to 10 year plan on the front end of one of these, are we going to project the cost of this project as it will be in the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th year?
Yes, there's RS means kinds of multipliers that will be built into as we look at the term of a project and make sure that we're counting for inflation factors.
So in that note, what happens if at the end of the 7 years or 20 years, whatever it is, if there's more money than is required, will we then use the refund policy? How do we refund that money back to the residents?
It's actually in section 6. If there's been an overcollection, the first step will be to credit against the tax payments due from those parcels.
So they get credit.
Yes, a tax credit.
All right, any other comments or questions on any of these items?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda items 2 through, is it 8?
8.
Yes.
And does that include the amendments suggested by Mr. Peterson?
With the amendment?
Yes, as amended, as the discussion with the changing of the verbiage in number 3.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is new business, and we start off with presentation from Goochland Public Schools regarding their 2020 county budget request. Dr. Rayleigh.
Good afternoon. This thing fell asleep on me, so we'll get it awake and
I know he's not going to talk for 2 hours because he's got to get to the basketball game.
You're right, you're right. Well, board members, thank you. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon and present the school board's approved budget for your consideration as you weigh the many different challenges that are in front of you in the next couple months. You'll find many similarities in approach between the school division's approved budget and the presentation given to you by Mr. Badesky when it comes to philosophy and the approach to business that the schools have taken and the approach that you have taken to date. And that's the beauty. One of the many beauties of being in this community is the alignment between schools and county government and the philosophical approach and the things that we value as a community. We do have several staff in attendance today, and certainly this process has started many, many months ago in October, much like your process started in October. And a benchmark that we have today. Thankful to have 2 school board members with us today. This budget that is presented to you was a unanimous budget that was approved 5-0 by our school board, and thank you, Ms. Hardy and Ms. Horn, for being here today to support the awesome things that we're doing in our school division. So it's truly an opportunity for us to share what we feel that we need as we're going forward in our school division's work. I do want to go back a little bit and talk about the investment that you have made to date in the public schools, some of the accomplishments that we have made as a result of your investment and this community's investment in our school, talk about the true needs of our school division, and then ultimately how are we going to pay for all of those needs that have been identified. And much like your budget has been presented that is in alignment with your strategic plan and your vision, your mission, your goals, and your core values, this budget is the same. And so as we go to inspire the next generation to make a positive impact and maximize the potential of every learner, our core values of echo, excellence, creativity, courage, honor, and optimism are embedded throughout this. And this budget is aligned directly with our 3 goals that are part of our strategic plan. So as you develop a budget, what are the financial resources that are needed for our instruction program and business operations? And so oftentimes things can be fragmented, but in our organization we want to utilize those financial resources and align them directly with what we need in our instructional program and to operate the business of our school division. But ultimately, as we have brought this proposal to you for your consideration, all of the challenges that we have, because just like you, we know that there are needs that we have that unfortunately the resources aren't there to support. So we need to make sure that we're making all of our decisions in the best interest of our students. And when we're challenged with, do we do this or do we do that, ultimately what's in the best interest of our children, and that's the decision that we need to land on. So we are a very proud and successful school division, and I'm going to share some of the accomplishments of this proud and successful school division, accomplishments that you have seen before, but for the benefit of the audience, it's important to note that there are 132 school divisions across the Commonwealth, and only 15 school divisions this summer were recognized with the Distinguished Achievement Award by the Virginia Department of Education, and we are one. So we are among elite company in many ways. And we have been recognized as the 10th highest rated school division in the Commonwealth, the 6th safest, and I always like to say that we are the school division of choice in the Richmond metro area. So we're very, very proud, and I am always amazed when I go into our classrooms and see the fantastic things that are happening in our classrooms and the accomplishments of our students and our staff, and it's a great sense of pride. And so this is our school division. These accomplishments are a result of the support that you provide, engaged citizens who do many, many different things to support our students day in and day out in this school division. And we are rated as the 8th highest special education department in the Commonwealth, certainly a fantastic rating as we look at compliance and academic performance of our students with disabilities. And this is a budget, so we need to highlight and celebrate the work that we do to make sure we're strong stewards of this county's fiscal resources. And much like the county, we've been recognized by GFOA for our strong budgeting. And we haven't celebrated this nearly to the level that we need to, but there are only 6 school divisions across the nation that have received this from a school division standpoint, and 1 of 3 in Virginia. So as we work to support your great work, as you strive towards additional strong fiscal measures in the community, we're playing a role in that, and certainly proud of what we're doing to make sure that we're spending our resources wisely on your behalf. But we are a school division that needs to be held accountable for making sure that students actually learn. That is our core business. So all those accolades are great, but our students actually learning in the classrooms. And so we are one of just a handful of school divisions across the Commonwealth that have been fully accredited over the course of the past 10 plus years. And we have the 13th best reading and math results in the state. So again, another measure of the investment that this school division, that this community has made in our school division, and how that investment is paying dividends on a multitude of different measures. On-time graduation rate continues to rise. We're proud that many of our students are walking across that stage in 4 years after they enter the high school. Certainly my ultimate goal is that to be 100%. That's something that we have conversations about with our high school staff frequently. And who are those 2 or 3 students right now? And what can we do? What will it take to get them across the stage? And so ultimately, I want that to be 100%. We're certainly where we need to be. We're heading in the right direction. But we are a school division that's more than just about achievement. A snapshot in time on one SOL test or one measure. When students enter a classroom in August, are they better off in June than they were when they walked in the classroom? When a student walks into kindergarten, are they 12 years better when they walk across the stage as a graduate in high school? So we look at growth. We are a school division that values growth over achievement. I want to share some metrics with you that indicate that in Goochland County Public Schools, we are truly closing the performance gap of students who are in a minority status, a student who has a disability. We value growth over achievement. When we look at student performance on a percentile basis, and we rate students in comparison to students across the nation, and how well are they performing on that measure, if you're a student who is in a subcategory of minority status, be you African American or Hispanic, or if you're a student with a disability, or if you're a student who's economically advantaged, when it comes to math, you are growing at a more rapid rate than students across the rest of the spectrum. So our students who are in those reporting categories are growing at a more rapid rate, and we truly are closing the performance gap when it comes to math, and those same metrics apply to reading. So proud to say that that metric gets a lot of attention in regional and national media, and so we're making great progress when it comes to meeting the identified needs of specific subgroups of students in our community. But board members, what you see in metrics takes place with the hard work of our students and our staff, and it's a result of the great support that you provide as well as our community. So when I was with you last year, I gave you a little bit of a snapshot of some things that are happening in our classrooms day in and day out. And that was a snapshot of things happening globally from preschool to the high school. I wanted to take a few minutes while we're here today and show you a video of some things that are happening in our high school. Our high school, as we know, has 860 students. It's really the crown jewel of what happens in our community. It's the entertainment hub of our community. You can go by that space 7 days a week, and there are always cars parked outside. So a lot of money has been invested in that. A lot of resources have been invested. When we think about our high school program, we oftentimes think about our career and technical education program, which is a source of great pride for us. But there are other programs we don't talk a whole lot about, specifically our governor school programs and our Advanced College Academy. And so just for the next few minutes, I wanted to take a moment and provide you with an insight regarding some of the programs that we're offering from a student perspective at Goochland High School.
also I can already get some of the classes out of the way when I go into college. So once I get into college, I can have all of those credits transferred, and I won't have to take most of those classes in college. So my favorite class would probably be between JROTC and calculus, and my favorite teachers would be the teachers of both of those. The JROTC instructors and Mr. Smith, because they both pushed me beyond what I felt like I was capable of doing. I enjoy the environment, the overall encouragement of all the administrators and the teachers and the students. MCJRTC. It's been the highlight of my high school career. It's given me a lot of opportunities to really come out of my shell and to just prove to myself that I can achieve a lot more than I thought I could. It's given me a lot of opportunities to pursue in my future that I don't think I would have had I taken a different elective or a different path. And my whole family's really been military, so it gave me something that I had known, but something where I personally hadn't experienced. And at the time I took it, it had only been here for a year. So something new and kind of daring to take, coming from the background I had where I was like cheering and that kind of stuff, and I kind of followed the mold. So it gave me a chance to really prove myself as a human rather than just following the mold that most people do.
I would have to say CTE class. The civil construction CTE class is something that I enjoy doing every day. Well, every other day coming in here, I look forward to coming to school and coming to this CTE class. One thing I really enjoy is welding. Well, I didn't know how to do welding at first, and learning how to just like take a motor apart and put it back together and learn the different parts inside the motor is something that I didn't experience throughout my childhood until I came to high school and I figured out what was, a little more detail about what was going on in the motor and how they put me. Oh, well, it's over now, but football is something I really enjoy. It was a big part of me coming through high school. I started at a late age. I mean, something I got into until I got into high school, and I just took off with it. And, I was an all-state player, but that's something, I'm going to miss deeply about Goochland is playing on Friday nights. But other than that, outside of school, it's pretty much sports and helping the community, and I love being in Goochland. It's something that everyone should experience living in Goochland. I have several favorite teachers I like at Goochland High School. They support me in everything I do. Coach Fowler, he's the athletic director. He was my football coach. Preston Gordon, and he looks out for me. I look out for him, and we just have a bond that probably can never be broken, either outside of school or inside of school. When after leaving school, I'm pretty sure he's going to be in my corner. Him and Coach Fowler both told me that if I need anything, just please come to them, and I respect them 100%.
I chose this course because I like building things and putting things together. I also like the use of technology in the class where you can design it all on the computer and watch it come to life. My favorite classes are this class, architectural drawing, and also technical drawing, because I like being able to design things on the computer and the use of the 3D printer. There's a lot of different diverse courses. There's a course here for everybody, whether you like nursing to computer drawing. There's a lot of different classes, and there's one just for you.
favorite would be AP Calculus and AP Chemistry. And I think the fact that such a small school, such as Richland High School, offers advanced AP classes such as chemistry and calculus is one of the most amazing things about our school and provides students with the best opportunities. I think it's scary to be starting an AP class for the first time. Personally, I've never struggled with it, and I think that's because I prepared myself well throughout high school. So I started in 10th grade through the Blue Ridge program with AP Biology, and we have that class on both day 1s and day 2s, so you have twice as much exposure to AP Biology through that, and that's a really great opportunity for students to test out AP and to get acclimated to the workload for AP. And then again, in my 11th grade year, I took AP Human Geography, which is a little bit easier than some of the other AP classes. And I think both of those courses and the way that they're set up here at GHS are beneficial for students to learn how to handle AP classes and how to study and how to get through that difficult workload that we may not face in pre-AP or honors level courses. So I think the most important aspect of Blue Ridge Virtual Governor School for people outside of GHS to know is that it's a very great opportunity for students to learn how to speak publicly and to be confident in their presentation skills. In 9th grade, you are enrolled in World History 1 and World History 2. In 10th grade, you're enrolled in AP Biology and Biotechnology. In 11th grade, you are able to take an online course. So personally, I went through a dual enrollment UVA course for engineering that prepared me for my future. And then in 12th grade, you take on a senior project that incorporates a senior internship, community service, and a legacy, as well as a research paper. So overall, the most important aspect of Blue Ridge Virtual Governor School is the personal preparation they force you to do with presentations and public speaking that many students who are not enrolled in the program don't have the opportunity to do.
So this is my senior project. I painted this mural. It was so nice. The lady that has this classroom, she wanted me to paint an inspiring mural. So I used to quote, "Art washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life." It's a quote from Pablo Picasso, and it took me about a couple months to paint it, and it ended up being my senior project. So I love it. I really love the environment that Beachland High School provides because it's not like most schools. It's very friendly and welcoming. And I've asked new students before, like, what do you think about Beachland High School? And they say it's a lot different than my old school. And the teachers are amazing. They make you feel really loved. So I just love the whole family environment that Beachland provides. Miss Morello, because, well, today's Valentine's Day, and we got her some Chick-fil-A chicken minis for Valentine's Day. And it just really showed our appreciation to her, and she was so happy. It like cheered up her face. She was having a rough morning, and she really it just brightened my day to see her happy with the gift that we got her. She's just been so amazing and so loving and caring for us this past year. So I really love art, and math is my favorite core subject. So combining both of them into one, architecture is like the best thing, the best career for me. The University of Virginia, I joined it a couple months ago, and I fell in love with it. My mom picked it out for me, actually. So I loved it, and I applied, got in, and so it's the best school for architecture, so I guess mine is.
So board members, I know that was a little lengthy, but I felt it important for you to hear from our students regarding their experience. And you hear the breadth of experiences that are being provided at the high school, the relationship that they have with their teachers. And these are our students now, but they're going to be the leaders of this community in the future. And with your support, you've been able to provide those opportunities to our students. And we just wanted you to thank you and hear from our students directly what they're experiencing as a result of your support. But not only at GHS, there are things happening in many other settings across our school division. And so certainly pictures are more powerful than the words that I can use to describe them. But across our school division, inside and out in many ways, fantastic things are happening. So ultimately, as we build a school budget, what are the needs that we have as we go forward so that we can continue that success and continue to march on the trajectory that has been already established so that we can continually shine and be that model of excellence across the Commonwealth. And so when you look at this from a goal opportunity. We've structured this through 3 different goal segments, and so the first one's directly related to teaching and learning. And so as we think about class sizes and experiences that our students are having not only at the high school and the middle school, this budget includes the funding to increase our staffing at the high school for an additional English teacher. There are fewer English teachers at the high school than there are in the other content areas, and we look at class sizes and some of the different metrics related to class size need to add an English teacher at Goochland High School. And then also at the middle school, this budget includes a new teacher for teaching math at the Goochland Middle School. We look at class size ratios again. We look at the number of courses that are offered. We look at the class sizes where our students are having some difficulties versus those where we have some maybe high-performing students. And so this math teacher would go to meet the needs of students who are struggling a little bit in those standards in collaborative classrooms where we could reduce that class size below 30 at Goochland Middle School. You have seen and heard there's a lot of conversation regarding the mental health needs of students, not only in this community, but in communities across the Commonwealth and nationwide. You know that the governor in his budget included funding for resources to support the mental health needs of students. So as we examine their true needs going forward, recognizing that it doesn't matter what we do in classrooms, if students are having some mental health concerns, if they're struggling with any sort of issue that they bring to the table on a daily basis, that we're not going to be able to do anything. So we need to make sure we meet students where they are and take care of their mental health needs. So this budget includes funding for a licensed mental health counselor, someone more of a clinical nature who's going to be able to provide support to students one-on-one at the middle school and the high school level, and also provide some resources to our teachers and our administrators at the elementary level. It will ultimately reduce our ratio of students to counselors and provide some great support for our students behind the scenes. In addition to that, we feel that there's a need to be able to expand some staffing at the high school. Currently, we have 3 counselors there, and we need to take one of those counselors who are currently on an 11-month contract and expand that to a 12-month contract so that we can do some more programmatic planning, meet the career needs of students, and provide better customer service to our families throughout the course of the summer. We also look at dual enrollment. You saw a lot of information related to some of our dual enrollment offerings, but unfortunately, J. Sargent Reynolds is raising the cost of tuition to us. The cost per credit that is being charged to the school division next year is going to go from $10 to $27 and change. And so ultimately, we had to make a decision. Do we, as a school division, absorb the cost of that? Do we pass those costs off to the families? Where is that balance point? At what point in time does it become cost prohibitive when you raise the cost beyond the point where families cannot afford it? So ultimately, this budget includes a balance point where we're passing off some of those charges to some of our families, and the school division would absorb some of those increases. So there's some additional funding from a school division standpoint, and raising the current tuition from $30 that we're charging to families to $40 for next year. We also took a look at some of our virtual offerings. There are courses that we are offering in a non-traditional setting because some of our students are provided a more personalized and individualized experience. And so what we've been done in the past needed to be revised because there were some compliance issues, and ultimately we were not providing support to students who are taking some of these virtual and online courses. If I was taking a course in German, I didn't have anybody at the high school who was going to be able to support me taking that course in German. So there's funding in this budget to be able to provide an online company to provide some support to our students, in addition to providing some support with our staff who are already in existence. And so there's a total of roughly $37,000 to be able to make sure that we're in compliance with what we need to do from a virtual learning standpoint and ultimately support our students in that regard. Something that's very important to me as superintendent is equity. As we are a school system and not a system of schools, in my opinion, your zip code should not determine the opportunities that are available to you. And if we're doing something at a school in the east, we need to make sure that those opportunities are provided to students at a school in the west. And so when we did an analysis of our field trips this past summer, we noticed that there was not equity. And so that was certainly something that was a priority to me heading into this budget. So we worked with our staff to determine their top 2 priorities. And I said to them, okay, if you were to go on 2 field trips next year that every student across the school division at the elementary level was able to take, what would it be? And so we looked at that through grade levels, and they're identified on the screen in front of you. We were not able to provide the resources in this budget to fund their top 2 requests, but there is $14,000 in this budget so that all the first graders have the opportunity to go to the Metro Richmond Zoo. Every 4th grader is going to go to Jamestown. So whether I'm at Byrd, Goochland Elementary School, or Randolph, Every student at that grade level is going to be given a common experience, and we felt that that was extremely important for equity. In addition to that, we also know that there are some students who need to extend some opportunities into the summer so that they can continue their learning. When students leave school in June and they come back in August, there is a slump. There is regression. And so as we think about opportunities to extend learning beyond the traditional school year, at this point in time, we're not having a conversation about year-round school. We're not advocating for revamping the calendar at this point in time, but we are trying to seek opportunities where students who leave in June can be provided remedial and enrichment opportunities throughout the course of the summer to ultimately, hopefully, reduce that summer slump that traditionally takes place. So this budget includes approximately $12,000 for us to do some fine arts programming, to do some enrichment related to coding, some enrichment related to environmental learning that's going to allow us to provide enrichment experiences to all students throughout the course of the summer so that we can extend that learning beyond the traditional calendar that we have at this point in time. So when we think about our first goal area, the total ask at this point in time is $453 in additional expenditures related to instruction, and you can see how that is broken out from a line item standpoint related to FTEs and total costs. Our second goal area is related to our folks, and as Mr. Badesky said, truly the work of any organization is directly tied to the quality people that you have doing the work of the organization. And so all these things that we celebrate as a school division are a direct result of the folks who are really doing amazing things for our community. So again, some more pictures that show the amazing things that are happening, from bus drivers to food service employees to teachers to custodians. I mean, it truly takes a team for us to make sure that we are successful and recognized as a leader the way that we are. So as we think about what we need to do to stay competitive so that we can attract the best staff, that we can keep the best staff, and we can ultimately be continually recognized for success, like you, we look at data and we see where we rate in the market. And from a teacher standpoint, although we've made some ground in the past, we're a little stagnant when it comes to our ranking at different levels in the teacher salary scale. So that was an important data point as we created our ongoing plan for total compensation for the school division. Like you, we also rate ourselves against others and what are other folks going to do as they are trying to attract some of the same talent that we're trying to attract. We look at a variety of different factors, not only from a public standpoint, but from a private standpoint as well. And then we look at history. What has the school division done in the past related to salary improvement? And so it's important for us to recognize all those variables. And much like Mr. Badesky's, just like his budget request, this budget request includes a 3% raise for employees. We want to certainly be competitive from a total compensation standpoint, so that is a part of the recommendation that is being sent to you by the school board for your consideration. Also, there are some workers' comp fees associated with that, but ultimately the focus of this goal area is a 3% raise for employees. We also need to be a little more strategic when it comes to recruiting our employees. We want to really try to attract a more diverse workforce, and we want to create a pipeline of talent who are maybe in our high school at this point in time who will come back and work for us. And so we look at the creation of what we call grow our own opportunities, where we can get students excited about a career in teaching early and keep them on the hook, and ultimately they go to college and come back to us. We need to cast a larger net when it comes to our recruiting opportunities, go to more institutions of higher learning that we have not been at in the past. And so this budget includes approximately $10,000 for us to expand some of our recruiting initiatives so that we can ultimately be the all-star team that we have always been. Now this is something that's a little unique. And so as we think about our current workforce and what the workforce of the future needs, data will show that there are teachers who leave not only this school division, but school divisions across the Commonwealth and across the nation because they need to take care of their families at home. And oftentimes those teachers are females who are staying at home to take care of young children. And so if we want to retain our highly talented employees, we need to think differently about what young professionals need in their career. And so are there opportunities, not only from a total compensation standpoint, but ancillary benefits that we can provide to employees that will help them remain employed by our school division for a longer term? So this is a minor step in the direction of recognizing that there's a changing workforce who has needs that we need to pay attention to. And so right now we There are slots that are afforded to us from the Virginia Preschool Initiative when it comes to preschool opportunities. There are some families who pay private tuition to come to be a part of our school division in preschool. And so this budget includes just some minor adjustments and some revenue streams so that we could have some of our employees, 4 employees at this point in time, who would pay $800 to the school division versus $4,000 that private employees pay, so that there are preschool opportunities for those 4 employees. So it's kind of a pilot program to see how it goes. There's a lot of excitement right now in our workforce for this opportunity. Want to see how it goes, and hopefully this will help us attract or maybe retain 4 employees who are maybe considering some other options, but some minor adjustments in our budget to be able to accomplish this objective. So ultimately, as you can imagine, this is where the majority of the expenditures will go in any future budget, and $852,000 in additional expenses to meet the needs of our employees long term. Third budget category looks at our operations, safety, efficiencies, and compliance. And so this budget includes taking one of our finance professional positions from a 0.6 FTE to 1 FTE. We're looking at the duties that individual will do so that we can better use their talents and ultimately meet the business needs of the school division. Also includes some funding for some transportation software, some technology software, some annual licenses for some safety software that we're using, and you see those prices outlined in the slide in front of you. Not a significant increase in this school area, about $190,000, roughly not $191 when it comes to meeting the needs of our business operations. So much like we have done in the past 2 years, we have scrubbed every single line in our budget. And we have asked ourselves critical questions and said, is this getting the return on the investment that we want from a school division standpoint? Is this the best use of our resources? And are there other ways to use that dollar to accomplish our strategic need? Because if you add up those 3 figures that I just shared with you, that far exceeds the revenue that we're going to have to support the budget. So we had to make cuts. We had to look at ourselves and say, what is the best use of these resources? And let's make some tough decisions. So I've outlined for you some of those changes. And in all, it's a reduction in current practice to the tune of $376,000. Where we've made cuts, we've made adjustments. We're going to use dollars a different way. We're going to use some one-time funds to accomplish this. So a variety of things that's ultimately going to allow us to balance the budget. As we have additional expenditures that outpace our revenue, we need to make some cuts, and I've outlined those for you for your consideration. The budget includes some additional FTEs, as I've described. Last year when I was here, we were looking at 404 employees, and there have been some changes in current year budget in addition to what I'm proposing in next year's budget. So an increase of roughly 8 FTEs from the time I stood here last year to the time I'm here today with this request for your consideration. So a little less than $1.3 million in additional expenditures. When you add up all the requests plus and you subtract the strategic abandonment, that's where we're looking at from an expenditure standpoint. Just like in the past, the vast majority of our budget goes to instruction. 70.3% goes to instruction, and then you add in technology, we're right at 78% goes toward instruction and technology. That's how the money is going to be spent. And 83% going to salary, wages, benefits for our employees. And you can see how the rest of the recommended expenditures are broken out by type. So the big question is, how are we going to fund all this? Where's $1.3 million going to come from to make it all happen? So right now, we're counting on some additional state resources through sales tax benefits, through some additional funding coming from the state. We are expecting a little bit of a decrease when it comes to some federal funding, but you can see those highlights there. Some increases as much as 4% when it comes to projected sales tax increases that would help us fund the needs that I've identified prior. This slide shows state sales tax, and you can see the increase over time and the rest of the state revenue. So certainly you can see that we're a beneficiary of some additional state revenue to be able to meet the needs that have been articulated prior to this. And then certainly we are very, very grateful for the support that you provide to make all of this happen, because we live and die and we are so dependent on the great support that you provide. As you know, the composite index indicates a lot of that, but you go above and beyond that. You do way more than the state of Virginia says that you have to do, and so we are quite thankful for that. relationship that we have with you is so strong, and we don't ever want to take that for granted. But this budget is balanced, and it's balanced with a request from the county of $740,000 greater than what it is today. And you can see the history of that over time. So ultimately, the revenues to support the budget are coming 69% from you, from the county, with just 23% coming from the Commonwealth, and the rest from other revenue streams. You can see the distribution over time is pretty similar. The variety of different funding sources are referenced here, but the distribution is pretty much the same over time. And ultimately, board members, this is a balanced budget where the revenues match the expenditures with the local transfer that I've described prior. So just like your budget, there are items that should we ever receive a windfall and we receive an opportunity to do some other opportunities, I wanted to outline those for you. We have done them, we have triaged them from a Tier 1 standpoint, from a Tier 2 standpoint, and so these are things that have risen to the top that should additional resources become available. These are the things that we have identified, so they're Tier 1. Some other needs that certainly would not be able to be funded this year, but things that may come back in prior budget years, Tier 2. And should we have a fund balance at the end of the year, these are some opportunities that we can use those funds for one-time expenditures that we don't need in future operational budgets. Looking forward to our conversation next week where we get a chance to talk in greater detail about the capital improvement plan. You're aware of what the school board has approved at this point in time, but I'm really excited about rolling our sleeves up and digging deep. Next week we have a chance to talk about the overall county needs, the needs that you have, some of the challenges that you're experiencing, and engage in collaborative conversation about your needs and the school's needs and how we can ultimately create a plan that's going to be in the best benefit of our community as a whole. But this is just one slide, a high-level overview of what the school board has approved. The numbers in red are minor adjustments where there was not an increased ask of expenses or appropriation from the county. The blue numbers are what the school board approved in December 2017. The school board took those approved numbers and forwarded them to you in those same time frames for your consideration. But probably the greatest change is the green number, where the school board has identified that there's a need for a 650-seat elementary school compared to the 500-seat elementary school that was in the prior plan. So certainly we can dig ourselves in and have a great conversation about this next Tuesday, but wanted to just forecast this a little bit and let you know what some of these figures are. Board members, I'm very grateful for your attention. Thank you for all that you do to support the great work of our students and our staff, because we couldn't do it without you. We couldn't do it without your support, without the time and commitment that you have made to invest in our students. And so the successes that I've described today, you can rest assured and be proud that you have played a significant role in that. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and we have staff here if I'm not able to answer those. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rayleigh. Any questions for Dr. Rayleigh?
No, got to digest it.
A lot of numbers.
A lot of information.
I'll start off. Just
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation, and we enjoyed the video. I didn't think it was too long, but I miss working with you guys. Thank you all for coming out. And this board has never micromanaged. In the time I was on the school board, this board never appeared to me to micromanage the budget. And I don't want to break that trend, but I'm excited about what you're doing, and I've got a lot of questions.
Sure.
And of course, I will encourage you, like I did when I was on the school board, encourage you in certain directions. So a few things jump out at me to talk about. And this, I've been just scribbling notes like crazy, catching up. My new best friends here have kept me so busy with the budget we have that I haven't had a chance to do a dive, but I did over the weekend read some things, and I'm relying a lot on the letter the transmittal letter that you wrote, where I got a lot of the information from.
Sure.
So I'm jumping back and forth from the slides. So these aren't in any order, but I'll just talk about a few things and maybe drill down a couple of points. But again, I know the school board is doing a great job of doing the digging, and you all have been, there's a lot more than there's a whole lot more behind the scenes.
Yes, sir.
But a question, and this impacts us, the health insurance, your numbers, it looks to me like you baked in a 3.5% health insurance increase, and you absorbed it all, you're not passing it through. Is that where we've actually landed on the actual increase? per our advisors?
I believe it was a little bit less than that, actually, Mr. Lumpkins. I'm thinking it was like 2.4%, is that correct? Yeah, 2.4. So in transparency, this budget that I presented to you is based off of the governor's version. We're going to experience a little bit of reduction in state revenue as a result of the final General Assembly version. I'm going to use round numbers, approximately $30,000. So the budget was built off of a 3.5% increase in insurance costs to the school division that is proposed that the school division absorbs. Well, at 2.4%, the savings between 3.5 and 2.4 was about $30,000. So although we're going to receive some reduced state revenue, the reduced expenditure from the health insurance balances it, so there's no additional increase needed.
That's exactly perfect. And so you had on, I see the number $821,107. $821,107 was in the letter in terms of the increase in the total cost of increase of salary and benefits. Your slide number 58 had 852, but I don't know if that's apples to apples. Your slide 58 was the end of goal 2 slide, and it said 852. Is that something that has changed, or am I just not comparing apples to apples?
Is that a direct result of health insurance change?
Well,
I love honesty.
No, that's fine. The letter says the total increase in the proposed cost for salary and benefits is $821,107. And then I believe that slide had total impact was $852.
That slide had more than just salary and benefits. That slide had recruiting initiatives, had a variety of other things related to maybe some equity adjustments within scale. So the slide included more than just what may be defined as salary and benefits.
Gotcha.
We will definitely research that, Mr. Lumpkins, and make sure that
that's fine.
We're right on
Did
that.
it have additional cost? Okay. Cost of anticipated 3.5. So yeah, the one item was recruiting initiatives for, I guess, close to 10,000. Yeah.
Workers' compensation, Mr. Lumpkins, was included in that, recruiting initiatives.
Workers' comp, those should be in your salary number, right? Okay.
But we will definitely make sure that we provide you the answers to that question.
Okay, that's just a little bit on that small delta. So, actual, what is one ADM equal? What are you projecting one ADM to equal in state money?
It's approximately $1,500
Okay, so
dollars per student.
that hasn't moved.
Nothing significant, no, sir.
Okay. Again, jumping around, I noticed in your letter, you're asking us for categorical, or some adjustments in terms of the categorical shifting. I'm receptive to that. When is that going to come before us?
Well, that's probably a conversation that we need to continue to have at the staff level. Certainly, this point in time last year, the school board requested a lump sum appropriation, and that's not part of the request at this point in time. But are there additional opportunities for us to be more efficient with the requests at a staff level so that not as many categorical transfers may need to be presented by the budget and by the supervisors? So a conversation that we can continue to have at the staff level for future consideration.
Yeah, I know that whole lump sum thing, that didn't work when we tried.
Yeah, who was the chair when that took place? I can't remember who that was.
Who pushed for that last year? That was a terrible idea. Yeah, my new best friend. And I think you answered this, that unfunded need prioritization, that is, you're giving it to us in the priority that right now where.
Yes, sir. Tier 1, the first one would be a career and technical education teacher.
I wanted to ask about that career technical. What classes would you, and do you have the space to do what you plan to do?
We have the space, yes. For example, at the middle school, we have 80 students who request an ag class, and we only have 20 students who can get that. So that CTE teacher would do a variety of things. We'd be flexible with our allocation of blocks, so to speak, at the high school. And so I would have Mr. Allen teach His total blocks would be at the high school. Right now, he's teaching a middle school block, so that would free him up. And then we would hire maybe an ag teacher who can also do some diesel mechanic kind of things. And so we'd be looking for maybe a unicorn to be able to do that. But we have a profile of somebody that we're looking for to expand that program.
Well, maybe if we can make sure we're all tightened down on all these little things, and when numbers come in, maybe we can, this board can look at that, because I know that would be significant. That would impact a lot of kids in a positive way.
Yes, sir.
So maybe we can look at that. When you talk about recruiting initiatives, and this, I know it's a perennial problem or challenge. I mean, it's every division probably in the country, but certainly Virginia has the challenge of recruiting. I hope you're using data to support what you're doing. And one thing that I've heard, just anecdotally, we're focused on salaries, and as we should be. And it looks to me, I know sometimes you can be chasing, when you're looking at numbers, we're looking at last year numbers, and we're chasing numbers perhaps.
Right.
But I keep also hearing, when I was on the school board and anecdotally since then, that what makes Goochland and what makes really any school division more attractive to folks is class size. So I commend you for what you're doing on that front, English teacher in the high school and then math teacher. I guess all I would say is I'll encourage you to keep that up, because I do hear that from people that went to the job fair. Do you have, when you do these job fairs and people are asking questions, obviously we can talk to them about the salaries and benefits. Do you have comparative data of the region of what class sizes are in Hanover, Chesterfield, Henrico, and those sorts of things that you can show people?
Not at our fingertips, but we do talk about class size. We talk about access to technology. We talk about professional development. We talk about tuition reimbursement. We talk about the fact that the school division is going to absorb the cost of insurance in the proposed budget. So when we talk about overall compensation, we're not just focusing on salary, because we recognize that it's the environment that we provide, it's the support that we as administrators give to our staff. There are so many factors that go into the work environment that go beyond salary, and so we try to talk about all those factors when it comes to recruitment.
Gotcha. That's good. Let's see. Do a couple quick ones here. Is Code RVA still going on?
Code RVA is still going. We are not a member of that at this point in time.
Not looking at that?
Not looking at that, no,
Okay.
sir.
All right. And I had to jot this down when you said that you're not talking to us about year-round schools. When will you be talking to us about year-round schools? That's what I want to hear. And I heard the other day that maybe it needs branding improvement. We can call it Four Seasons schools versus year-round.
There are some who call it Four Seasons schools, so it was a topic of discussion at a work session this past July, and moving the needle in a direction of maybe more towards a four-season school, recognizing that there are students who, when they leave school in June, they're not provided any opportunities. They're sitting at home playing video games or not really doing anything. And so what can we do to extend those opportunities so that students are provided enrichment, remediation? And so we're creating a calendar that from June to August, there's something for a student to do. Now, it's not called four-season school or year-round school, but there are going to be opportunities and experiences that students can have so that learning can continue. It's certainly part of a greater community conversation.
Yeah. Well, I encourage you to keep it going. I've always felt that was sort of the low-hanging fruit. If you really want to improve results for students, that, to me, that was good. Couple more, and I'll wrap up. I believe I've tried to do some research over the last month or two. The Goochland Education Foundation, I think what they're contributing is, it's nominal. They're supporting some things, but it's not a significant amount, is it?
It's not. We have strategic innovation grants that they support to the tune of approximately $15,000. They're currently doing a STEM backpack program to the tune of about $5,000. There's a flow-through grant from Capital One for what we call the Khajiit mobile hotspot devices. That's a $25,000 grant from Capital One through the foundation to the school division. There's one other thing that I'm missing. $7,000 for our food bus that we're building.
Okay.
For air conditioning and those kind of things. So it's not it's certainly greatly appreciated, but not maybe as much as one might think.
My higher level question on that, what has been the trend of the foundation's donations?
The focus right now of the foundation is what they're describing as innovative programs. We're really focused on science, technology, and engineering and math, and programs that maybe are stretching beyond the traditional approach to education. So they're looking at it through a different lens.
Has the trend been up, though, for what they're, when you put a dollar amount on what the foundation is doing, has that trend been flat, down, or up?
I would say it's been relatively flat.
Okay. All right, thank you. In the little video, I saw that one girl talking about Blue Ridge.
Mm-hmm.
We're still fully enrolled in that, and that's rolling right along.
36 students per year, yes, sir.
And Ms. Horn, are you our representative on Blue Ridge? Okay, good. I'll talk to you about how that's going. I'm curious. I thought that's invaluable. I'm glad kids seem to still be doing well with that.
Yes.
Has that been growing as a program in general?
The program overall, of course, board members, that's a partnership with 7 other school divisions across the region. I think there are approximately 670 students overall in that program. We send 36 students per year to that, and there is no local outlay for that above and beyond what we provide in kind. So
right.
It's a tremendous opportunity for our students.
All right. So in summary, you have a $34 million budget, and it looks like we're contributing a little bit more than $23 million. I think you said it was around 69%.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Budget. And you've got a total of 8 FTEs that you're increasing?
See, that's where it gets a little down in the weeds. So when I gave my presentation last year, it was that top number. Did some things in the current year budget to reallocate some funds to add some FTEs with no additional increase. But I believe this new budget includes 2 or 3 new FTEs. So from last year to this year, it's an increase of 8 FTEs based on current budget and projected budget. Yes.
Gotcha. Well, you've got 3, I mean, you've got
408 to 412, I believe.
Okay. So you've got 2 teachers and a counselor, and
Yes.
then the rest in that slide were other areas.
The rest were changes we made this year. For example, we took $80,000 and used it to hire some cafeteria monitors and a security staff at the high school. So they were more reallocations in current year. So they were not necessarily in the budget that was approved by the supervisors last year.
Last question. I know I think I saw Ms. Wagner out there. I know she's been doing an awesome job on the special needs side. How is our scores and metrics and performance in the special needs area? Is that trending in the direction you want it to go?
Students with a disability are growing at a more rapid rate than students who are non-disabled. So their growth results are outpacing those who are being provided a more regular education program. You look at a variety of metrics from growth to achievement. Our students with disabilities are performing exceptionally well. That's one of the many reasons why we've been rated as number 8 in the Commonwealth. Look at compliance, look at performance, and it's a result of Jim Wagner's leadership.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for all you're doing, and I'll encourage my fellow board members to see about that, your number 1 unfunded priority there for the CTE teacher.
We're thankful for your consideration.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Dr. Raley? Thank you, Dr. Raley. Great presentation, and I'm proud to serve with you guys.
Yes, thank you so much.
And we'll see you on the 12th.
All right, yes, sir.
Thank you. At this point, I know there are folks here waiting to present, and we have a dinner appointment tonight, but we're going to take 5 minutes just to refresh a little. Thank you. Be back at 5:10. Mr. Drumright.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Paul Drumright, Administrative Services Manager. It is my pleasure to speak to you tonight about the health and welfare section of the fiscal year 2020 proposed budget. It's my pleasure to cover a number of different agencies that are included in there. I have representatives here. They're still here. They haven't left. I made sure. From Goochland Powhatan Community Services, Goochland Cares, the Goochland Health Department, Goochland Branch Library, Department of Social Services, Office of Children's Services are all here in case you have questions as I go through. Moving into the first section, I'm not going to go into detail about what Community Services, Goochland Powhatan Community Services does. You heard them speak back in December. They're your mental health developmental disability agency. They do have performance measures, as you can see on the screen. They meet 13 out of 15 of those measures, which is a really great. Going into their budget that we are proposing, we are just proposing a slight increase in cost, or an increase in funding for them, and that is mainly going to help with salaries and retaining existing employees. Moving along, they do have some challenges that they've outlined as in coming up in the future or going on right now. They relate to the Medicaid expansion. They relate to the STEP Virginia, which is the implementation of stuff related from the state to mental health, behavioral, and substance abuse, as well as then some other financial realignment and then a settlement that the state has. Moving on into the next one is Goochland Cares. And many of you are already familiar with that, so I'm not going to cover that piece. They do have performance measures that you can see on the screen. They are a wonderful partner for the county. And moving into what we're proposing for the fiscal year 2020 budget, they are, for the most part, on all their stuff remaining the same. We are giving them a slight increase in the emergency home repair funds, and that is because they are actually, as part of the county's housing task force, they are running through their home repair funds well before the end of the year, and so we're giving them a slight increase to help cover a little bit more homes that they can address and keep people in those homes. They also have identified some challenges and future issues that they see on the horizon. They relate to increased costs for food, for the food bank. They are seeing more folks using their services because they have a nice shiny building, and so it's when everything's together, it's great having people be able to get all the services, but then you have to pay for it all. And then they're aware that there are services that they cannot provide with their current funding. Moving into the health department, many of you are familiar with the health department, so I'm not going to cover everything they do. They also have some performance measures, as you can see on the screen. One thing I will call out just is the septic on-site applications and continue to increase, as well as the well applications. Moving into the proposed budget for the health department, we are proposing an increase, and that increase is going towards one full-time FTE, which is actually split over two different programs. One will be an environmental health specialist who will be able to help address the increasing need they're seeing related to the on-site septic in the well. And so they're going to be sharing that position with New Kent County. And then there's also going to be a population health individual who will be helping with health programming related to opioids, as well as also then everything that is coming out of the community health assessment and community health improvement plan that are currently ongoing. Moving into their future outlook and challenges, they're expanding that population health program. So that, again, that's where that part-time FTE is going to go and help with that initiative. And then as well as going to help with the opioid response that is already have a number of these agencies are working together related to that. And then down at the bottom, that growth in the residential and commercial development, that's where that other FTE, we're going to start trying to address that. But that's going to just something that they keep seeing on their radar. Moving into the library, we are a member of a regional library system, which we share with a number of other localities, as you heard presented back in December. So they have statistics we have on screen right now. We substituted in a new one up there is the new card holders, is a new performance metric they wanted to look at. Moving into the regional library, we are seeing a slight increase in their funding. That is related to salaries as well as health insurance. And I will have to note that we will be seeing after we baked in our budget, they got a increase in their health insurance cost from Hanover, who handles it all, how they're calculating it. So we're actually going to have to come back with an amendment to address some additional funds that we were not able to cover in this right now. And so that's just about $11,000 there.
Paul, just to clarify, 11,000 total or 11,000 additional?
11,000 in addition to what we have here. So they went from expecting an 8% increase in health insurance up to a 35% increase. And then they went from merit increase, they were planning on a 2% and had to moved it up to a 3% merit increase. So all of that together was something that was not expected, and we tried to capture and get it into this budget, but we just did not have time as the finance staff was working on it. But so that would be coming as a amendment. They also have outlook and challenges, including salaries and staffing, health insurance increases. You heard me mention that already, the up 35%. And then they're looking at, their format, their content, and all the offerings that they have for the citizens that can be shared throughout their system. But that's something that they continue to need to look at. Moving into social services. Social services handles everything from adoption and disabled to daycare, foster care, as well as then your benefit programs such as SNAP and Medicaid and the temporary assistance for needy families. They also administer the community action for the county. Here we have one of their metrics showing the history of Medicaid and SNAP. Now note that this is only the calendar year 2017. They do not have calendar year 2018 yet, but we still wanted to be able to show that. Moving into the next one, this shows you the community action program, and through all this, they're using, I believe it's $170-some thousand to handle all of this. You heard Dr. Raley mention the the Goochland Public Schools mobile feeding unit. Here is a picture of it. The community action, Goochland Community Action, helps contribute money towards that. So that's one of those many categories that they had on that screen. And then in the TANF, they have supporting Goochland Preschool, as well as then summer child care and also employment services out of Community Action TANF funds. Moving into their budget, they do have some personnel costs or normal. You have raises that would come through the state, as well as then just other operating costs. But so we're not seeing any major changes with their budget. And then for their issues that they're highlighting, the number of children in foster care, while it is decreased from a high, it can always, at the moment's notice, change back. And so keeping that on the forefront. Medicaid expansion, it was not as crazy as they were initially expecting or being told it was going to be, but they are seeing additional cases coming in. And then you have the Medicaid waiver. Right now, they're still waiting on guidance on who's going to handle that, how is that going to look. Are they going to have to be seeing people in the offices, or is it going to be reporting? So some of these stuff are still waiting to hear back from the feds and the state on that. And then the other one is that they just have folks who are very close to retirement, so trying to keep that pipeline of keeping folks who have history or building up talent as well. Moving into the Office of Children's Services, this one manages the Children's Services Act program funds. He works collaboratively with a number of these other agencies to address youth with mental needs, as well as educational needs, and as well as folks who are coming through social services. So he as well manages a Juvenile Community Crime Control Act grant that we have, and then he helps to develop community resources to try to help strengthen our families and children. Here is a metric we have for that, and the nice thing is to look at fiscal year 2019 right now. These are children in foster care who achieve permanency. So to see folks going back home to families or being adopted or moving out to live on their own, it's great to see some successes in this area, and so it's something we try to keep track of. Moving into his budget, we are seeing just a normal cost rise for salary and benefits. We do have a little bit of an increase due to their increased costs as they get for special education. That is something that continuously goes up. The state is trying to put a restriction on that, at least while they can do a study to address that, but we still have to plan for increased costs. And then you see this final note, funding of $200,000 from foster care to mental health. And what we're doing here is, this is already money that's in the budget. We're just creating a new category so we can better track where the money's going. Right now, those folks who might be getting mental health services were lumped in foster care. And so we want to put them back into a separate category so we can see really where the money's being spent, instead of making it unclear where it was. The challenges that he has is Family First Prevention Services Act. This is an act that is coming down to the feds and to the state, and how it's going to affect the youth that we serve. They're still working on what it's going to be defined, what services are going to be eligible, and how it will affect Goochland families, as well as then also foster care services. Moving into the last category we have, this is related to contracted services support. And so these are nonprofits, other agencies that help offer services that the county cannot offer or should not be in the position of offering. And in there, we had 6 in the adopted fiscal year 19 budget. We received 9 to be requested for the proposed budget. Out of that, we are recommending 6 of them. As you can see, it's only a slight increase over your fiscal year 19 adopted. Of those, here are the ones that we are recommending. All of these are ones that we have previously funded in multiple years, and they, for the most part, except for Reynolds, they are all remaining level funded. Reynolds is going up slightly, and that is due to a 3% increase over the region, and then we are paying for our share of that, which comes out to about 3% out of the group. The 3 that we are not recommending are here on the screen, and the total amount that they would have wanted for all 3 would have been $20,500. And that is all the information I have for you. I'm happy to answer your question. If I can't, as I said, I got folks, hopefully I didn't hear any doors open, so they should still be here.
Still there. Yeah, got your back.
Questions for Mr. Drumright? No? Oh, you must have done a great job, Paul. No
Well,
questions.
As always, if you have questions after, as you're digesting information, feel free to let Mr. Badesky know. Feel free to let myself know. Well, if you let him know, he's going to let me know anyway.
Nice,
So.
nice.
Nice ways to pass the buck.
Just real quickly, there are a lot of folks here that did want to just recognize all the agencies' support and thank you. I know all of you are past 5 o'clock at this point, but the work that you guys do for us every day is greatly appreciated. Serve a lot of folks of many different needs in our community, so thank you. And so we continue to try to support you as funding allows and permits, and just really thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Definitely want to echo those comments, because we could not do it without these fine folks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have General Services, Parks and Recreation, and Cooperative Extensions. Mr.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Derek Stamey, Deputy County Administrator for Operations. It is my pleasure to provide for you a presentation on the proposed FY 2020 departmental budgets for General Services, Parks, Recreation, and Tourism, and our Extension Services Department. And away we go. As you may recall, our General Services Department is comprised of three primary functions. The first one being our Facilities Management Department. It's located on page 143, found within your budget binder. So if you'd like to follow along there as we go through the presentation, that's the page that it begins on. The primary functions of our Facilities Management Department is to take care of our county-owned facilities and properties, that being our indoor properties. Right now, we maintain over 30 county-owned buildings, which computes to over 200,000 square feet of building space. That includes everything from walls to roofs, to ceilings, to floors, to all the HVAC systems that ensure the operational capacity of those buildings. Our work requires us to provide a safe and clean environment in all of our buildings and all of our parks, utilizing best management practices. And very importantly, this portion of General Services oversees the implementation of the capital improvement program for the county. I can't stress enough the impact that our capital improvement program has on our operational features. All of our capital improvement projects require oversight from their conception to their completion. That's everything from indoor and outdoor facility construction to renovations to systems or maintenance and replacement. And our facilities management crew provides those services for the county. Examples include our animal shelter, all of our parking improvements, our ongoing HVAC replacement, as well as our vehicle replacements and park construction and improvements. A very high-level view of our budgetary impacts. As you can see, our personnel, there is a personnel increase related to facilities management, and that is directly related to the shifting of an office manager position that is currently shared between General Services and Parks and Recreation. Due to the influx of work and the amount of administrative work that has to be conducted by our General Services Department, we felt that it was important to actually shift that position from a shared position to a position that is solely focused to providing that administrative support to our facility maintenance division. Again, that was previously shared by Parks and Recreation. Other operating increases for facilities management are directly tied to our contracted services as well as our utilities and maintenance supplies operating lines. Future outlooks and challenges. Aging county infrastructure. As you can see in the picture, the top picture there, that is a photograph taken from Central High School related to the most recent restroom renovations, and the picture below that is the recent update to those restrooms. You can see that aging county infrastructure is going to continue to strain our resources both from a time and money perspective. Also, our resources will continue to be strained due to the addition of outdoor facilities and increased demand for facility use. The Central High School complex is a great example of that. Just recently, Parks and Rec submitted a report to us that showed a 46% increase in demand for indoor facility use and an ongoing 11% increase in outdoor facility use requests. So we've seen a large increase in the demand for our facilities. So that's going to continue to strain our resources. The second prong on the three-pronged approach to our General Services program is grounds management. That's located on page 148 of your budget book. Our grounds management crew is responsible for the overall management of all county-owned and operated open spaces, parks, and grounds. Right now, we maintain over 35 areas within the county's jurisdiction. That's everything from a streetscape in Centerville to a park to the grounds of the courthouse complex to our pump stations to all of our ball fields that you see the photograph there on the screen. We have approximately 7 people maintaining all of those areas in addition to some of our on-call contracts that we use to provide our turf management program, the landscaping services, irrigation services, parking lot maintenance, you name it. We are rolling on all cylinders and firing on all cylinders when it comes to our grounds management. Our grounds management is flat, essentially flat from the previous year. There is actually a small decrease, I believe, and funding for that function. Again, I can't stress it enough. The addition of new facilities as well as increased demand for ground services will continue to strain these resources. We are seeing a huge surge in citizen and county user group and private entities demanding the use for our facilities. A good example are our athletic tournaments and our Autumn River Days event that took place this past November. We just found out recently that we will be hosting the state boys tournament for baseball in 2020, I believe. Is that correct? 2020, for multiple age groups, and they are looking to us to potentially host for future years. I think they were blown away with both our facilities, the standards that we have for our facilities, as well as our user groups that help us with the maintenance and the ongoing improvements to those facilities. It's more than just cutting grass. You can see, I believe that's Joe Whitlow there preparing our batter's boxes for this coming spring season. They are running on, like I said, on all cylinders. The third prong on the general services function is our convenience centers, located on page 138 of your budget book. We operate 2 convenience centers, one in central and one in western Goochland County, and we operate those to provide services for our citizens for safe and convenient disposal of their household waste and yard debris. And you can see the laundry list of all of the different items that we recycle at both of our locations. High-level snapshot of our budget. It includes a personnel increase due to an additional part-time position to assist with convenience center coverage. We have found that it is difficult to provide adequate coverage for the convenience center at times due to heavy volume. We've also evaluated opening the convenience center on some of our more non-traditional holidays, Columbus Day being one that we've not operated on in the past. We did benchmark ourselves with other localities and found that we probably should adjust our schedule so that we are ensuring that we're providing those services for citizens and meeting that demand. Another increase there is due to the operating costs primarily related to our contracted services. As we see an increased volume in refuse collection, that does require additional visits by our contractor, which ultimately requires additional services and higher expenditures related to those services. Future outlook and challenges for our convenience centers. We will need to explore an additional facility or recycling location to service the eastern end of the county. That is in the CIP, I believe, for 23 or 24. I'll have to go back and look, but that is something that we're going to have to continue to research. We'll also have to evaluate the need to expand our Sunday hours to meet volume demands. That has been a discussion in the past, as well as what I've mentioned previously, expanding our operating hours to allow services on non-traditional holidays. Parks, Recreation, and Tourism, page 166 of your budget binder. The goal and primary functions of our Parks and Recreation and Tourism Department is to provide programs and facilities for our residents of high quality and cleanliness and safety. In addition, our Parks and Recreation and Tourism Department will serve as a conduit for county-centric tourism and agritourism-related activities, programs, and events. While we won't be providing those activities, our goal will be to harness all of those different activities and different venues and different items and activities people can participate in countywide, and providing that information for the public to digest and understand and be able to come and visit Goochland County, hopefully spend some money and return to their places of where they lay their heads at night. High-level view of the Parks and Recreation budget. We do have a slight increase in our personnel costs due to the increase of a conversion of a part-time position to a full-time recreation supervisor. As I previously mentioned, there was a shared position with the office manager. With that shifting to general services to help with some coverage needs and some administrative support with their functions, it left a hole with Parks and Recreation. Due to that increase of our facility use and the demand on facilities, we did try to convert, or we had requested and are proposing a position to be converted from a part-time to a full-time to help with that gap in coverage with all of the facility demand that we have. Future outlook and challenges. Programming and facility-based services by the community is continuing to rise. I've talked about the demand for facility use. We're also seeing an increase in demand for programming and facility-based services from a facility standpoint. So again, staffing the facilities, making sure they're clean, making sure that they're properly staffed when folks rent those, that's going to continue to place a demand on our department resources. We are looking to implement a county-centric tourism initiative in coordination with economic development, so that'll be something to be on the lookout for as Parks and Recreation and Tourism moves forward into fiscal year 20. Virginia Cooperative Extension can be found on page 189 of your budget book. Pay special attention to the logo above it. Thank you, Jessica. Jessica's right here behind me to my left. She did a great job with that. Primary functions of our extension program is to help the citizens in Goochland County improve their lives through agriculture and natural resources, family and consumer sciences, 4-H, youth development, and community viability. They also work hand in hand with the school system in developing educational programs to meet the needs that fit those 4 areas. They also we are looking for them to assist us with our efforts related to promoting agritourism, and as well as to provide support for other county agencies and community organizations related to special events and programming. Rossawek and Field Day of the Past are the two immediate events that come to mind. From a funding standpoint, there is a small increase primarily due to an increase in the county's contribution for extension personnel. As you may recall, we do provide a contribution to them as it relates to their full-time staffing. So we provide contributions related to 1/3. We match 1/3 of the costs related to their unit coordinator, as well as their agriculture and natural resources position and their office manager. The personnel line that you see at the top is actually a county position. It's a horticultural assistant that we fund. It is housed under extension, but it is a fully county-funded position. So again, personal costs, very, very few changes for FY20. Operating costs, an increase in overall contributions of $963. Future outlook and challenges for extension. Demand for programming and services by the community continues to rise, as well as demand within the school system. Current extension staff, excluding the unit coordinator, 4-H agent, are primarily working with adult-oriented services and resources where the largest areas of growth are for ages 5 to 19. And again, another thing to be on the lookout for, as you saw on that first slide for the extension section, is working cooperatively with the county to build upon the agricultural center concept. And with that, I am glad to take questions.
You take a breath first.
Questions for Mr. Stamey?
I will take a drink of water.
Questions? You have a 4-H program for adults. I saw where
Sure.
I don't know if you
I'm
guys
sure
saw
we
where
did.
2 little girls were lost in California, and they survived 2 days out in the cold.
Because they
Yeah.
learn survival skills through their
Through their
local 4. I
4-H.
actually sent that email to our folks
yeah.
at the Ag Center and said, hey, this might
That
be a
was
good
pretty cool.
opportunity to promote that. So,
Thank you.
all right.
Any questions or comments? Thank you, Derek, and
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody,
Been under the
for-
weather, I apologize. So,
Don't run too quick.
yeah.
It's been hanging around a while.
so thank you.
Mr. Alvarez, before you can sit down, before anyone else leaves, or we go on, we have one more item before we break for our dinner with GLE this evening. Always at the end of these sessions, try to give the board some time to catch their breath on today's presentations, but also reflect back at this is now the 3rd, I believe, budget presentation. There are sometimes questions that have come up. One of the things I'll be doing after tonight, Mr. Lumpkins had asked some questions at last meeting. I'm going to be making sure I share all those with the board. We got some feedback on some of those questions that related primarily to really utilities presentation and some of the budget questions there. But this is the opportunity for anything that we discussed today or in prior sessions to consider any amendments, considerations. As you know, when we come back the night of the public hearings, we'll also be sharing, actually that day as well, any amendments that we have that come out of either these discussions where you heard Paul mention a change in request as it related to the libraries. There's a few of those that will be coming to you at that point as well. But if there's anything the board has, this is our opportunity to discuss some of those at this time.
Yeah, I'll just put it out there. I'm new to this process. I didn't want to get behind in terms of missing the opportunity to maybe mention a few things that I think we all have discussed in the past, but I want to make sure that these things are discussed, not so much discuss them now, but I've talked to you all before about compensation for this board and compensation for the planning commission. Those are two items I hope we'll address somewhere in this process. But again, I asked Mr. Badesky a little bit before this meeting, the timing on those sorts of things, and he suggested, this was the appropriate time, at this meeting and our subsequent meetings before we get to adoption, I suppose, and maybe, I don't imagine we'll be talking about amendments at adoption, but hopefully we'll have it narrowed down. But, and Ms. McGee, at my request, she shared with me the cite to the code section at 15.2, 14.2, and the short summary of it is, my understanding is correct, that if we're going to look at compensation for this Board of Supervisors, we have to act before July 1. And it can only be effective after January, when a new board takes place. So, we've looked at the comparative numbers and compare neighboring jurisdictions. I'll put a number out there just to where I'm thinking, and this is picking up from some things that have been shared with me, but I would think that $15,000 a year for a member and maybe $17,500 for the vice chair and $20,000 for the chair would be numbers that I would think would be appropriate. Again, understanding that I think if we don't take action, then I think the next board is going to be in place for the next 4 years. So that's why, to me, timing is important. This board is not like the school board before. I think we came in, accepted what the rate was then, and haven't changed it. And I don't know that we should completely single out people that are serving on this board to not share some kind of increase as the cost of living and as really the county grows and the duties increase. And maybe that's a good jumping off point to talk about the planning commission. I think, I want to look to my planning commissioner and the planning commission to take some time and roll up their sleeves and to look at these things. But I'll tell you right now, I'm embarrassed and hesitant to ask the planning commissioner in my district to spend any time talking to me, in addition to the time he spends at the meetings when the compensation is, I understand it's $150, I think, a meeting or a month. So I don't have a number in mind, but if y'all wanted me to put a number out there, I would think something in the neighborhood of $400 or $500 a month for the planning commission would not be unreasonable. Again, it still wouldn't pay people for what I think what they do now and what we would expect a member to do. But I guess to kind of frame it one way, it shouldn't be for people who are retired or independently wealthy that the only ones that can really make it work. There's a chicken and egg problem with this, because I don't want to be interpreted as suggesting that the current members aren't doing what's asked of them. I think they are, and I think they're willing, but I know it's a load on them. You can talk to them, and it's a lot on them, and so that's my thought on those two items. Since we just heard from the schools, I would like to see the board look for the $72,000 and some change in their budget to get the CTE teacher for the high school and middle school complex. The CTE program, as you know, since we all got elected in 2011, they've grown it tremendously, and it has been, you see it on the videos, you all know this, but it has been super impactful on the students, and if that's their number one priority, I would like to see us maybe fund that. And I figured somebody would say, well, where's the money? I've got some thoughts on that too, but.
We will need corresponding cuts to address that.
Well, you handed the Goochland County FY20 contributions, and that looks like it's going to be $149,326. One thought I have is to take that $49,000 that's above the 100 and prorate that cut across prorated equally across these organizations, and then we're close to 50 of the 72 that they've asked for. And again, I don't want to be boxed. I think there's ways to find the money. I would look at some of the projections and look at some of the revenue projections a little more closely. We talked at the last meeting about the conservative nature of the projections. I would want to look, but if we want to stick to that, then I would look at the, what is a penny on the personal property tax rate? I think we're cutting that 5 cents. I think it's 125, so isn't it 25,000 per penny? Then I would say I would forego a penny. This is just to directly answer the question, where's the money come from? I don't know that this is necessary, but if that was the way it was presented to me, we're looking at hard numbers right here. Contribution and a penny on the personal property tax would get us almost to that number exactly.
And certainly, we welcome feedback from the board for that, but if the board decided that there was a priority that you wanted to address, we could also bring recommendations back to the board on how that may be accomplished as well, some of which may be similar to what Mr. Lumpkins has suggested as well.
Any discussion on Mr. Lumpkin's proposals? What would be our next steps for?
Typically, if we were making amendments to something or moving forward, we'd go through the typical process to make sure that there was at least a majority of the board that wanted to make these amendments.
Let's do that first.
And then you don't necessarily have to determine how you're paying for them tonight. We can bring you back recommendations and options if you want to move forward on any of these.
And again, I just want to appreciate everybody's consideration of it. I'll go forward tonight, but I didn't come here asking for that. I just didn't want to come up with these things too late in the process to say, John, why didn't you talk about these things 2 or 3 weeks ago? So that's why I'm bringing them forward now so that they can gel. I wasn't looking for an answer, but if I'm not backing away and saying that, please give me some time to work everybody and make my phone calls and stuff. But I just wanted to put it out there that's those are things that I'm seeing so far in the budget that I would like us to have on our horizon to deal with.
So we have 2 and 2 meetings before the next budget discussion. Is that right?
Actually, no. Next Tuesday is your next budget discussion. We have CIP, which at the end, we will have a similar kind of time to discuss any additional changes. After that, you have town hall meetings. And then the first meeting we come back to is we will have some time in the afternoon, but the evening is your public hearings. And so if you don't want to take any action on these tonight, you certainly will have some time next Tuesday to do that. I think I did provide the board and with Lisa's assistance, we did a benchmark of board salaries and planning commission salaries. I think some of the community development staff helped with that benchmark. We can resend that to you so you have time to relook at that prior to next week. And then at some point, we'll need some direction on at least the school's additional position, if there's interest in us trying to identify funding for that as well.
Well, this is the first time we've seen the school budget, so I am in no way prepared to do anything on this till I review it. So at the minimum, a couple of days to go through this. I had a lot of questions, but I just don't feel it's appropriate to ask till I've reviewed it. So I'm in no way prepared to do this tonight at all.
We can keep this running list and bring it back next week for you.
Yeah, I'm not. Again, my bringing it up was because I didn't want to be at the last minute saying, John, why didn't you bring this up weeks ago? I agree, and that's why I saw some things in Dr. Rayleigh's presentation, and it sounds like they've got some things to come back to me on the salary and expense piece. Before we do something like this, I really want to be confident that they've turned all the knobs and done everything they can to tighten things down. He had the explanation that I know their budget was based on the governor's budget, and that didn't come through, so they're saying that the health insurance and the change in budget is a wash. So, but I think we all want to be absolutely confident that they have tightened down everywhere they can before we make a change like that. So, yeah, I thank you, Ms. Lasclette. I just wanted to put it out there. If you can get ready in 2 days, that's amazing, because I think it's going to take longer than that to pour through it and to really, and to hear back from them on some things as well. And the personal property tax, I looked at that. Have we advertised that? Have we already started the process where we would be advertising it at $395, and then we wouldn't be able to change that to like $396 or something? Or
You can't increase it.
we can't increase it. So we voted last week to advertise it at $395, right? Okay. So, I mean, we're kind of, unless we're ready to re-advertise. So there's another reason that maybe I should have even, well, I couldn't bring this up before I saw the budget, but we've already started down that path of kind of at least locking ourselves in on that person, or having to advertise again.
Let me
So-
get, it looks like we may need some clarification about when what our advertisement is. Ms. Biscayne-Switz?
If are we talking the fees?
The
It's-
rates.
Is that part of the fee document?
It's the tax rate.
Rate,
It's
personal
the
property tax rate.
tax rate.
I don't,
The notice of property tax, the 30-day notice,
Right.
that's already been
Right.
advertised.
Well, I have to look somewhere else, I guess, or,
Or we have to
stop and
re-advertise.
re-advertise, yeah.
But in order to re-advertise, we need that consensus from the
Yeah.
The board that that's going to be a
Ready to
source.
even support this yet,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank
Okay.
you all for
Thank you.
considering.
Mr. Minnick, you have a,
Right, just a quick comment, I guess, about any kind of tax, potential, discussion about a tax is that now, since we're going out into the community later this month, is that we need to be having, I think, a discussion about this in the public with perhaps some options laid out, just a discussion, because I'm not getting a number of people coming up to me wanting us to raise, the property tax for any particular reason, for one reason or the other. Not yet. So, I mean, I think that either this board or the future boards, to take that into consideration, I think it needs to be well socialized in the community that there is some thought around entertaining that for one reason or another, and how does the community feel about that? So I think that on the contributions, again, this is just my personal opinion, I think some of these are actually, we've rolled these into the department budgets already. I think they used to be kind of freestanding. Some of these, I'm not sure we can actually do too much with, but I would comment specifically that I am kind of alarmed a little bit by the community college requests, both in the budget presentation and in the contribution arm here a little bit, and I guess I just have noticed over time that seems to draw a continuous annual increases.
Yep.
Year over year, while these others in this list, John, really represent a fairly fixed, relatively fixed number over time. Not in all cases, but in some cases. So, I would offer that, again, there's a bit of a symbiotic relationship between Reynolds and the schools, at least on some educational programs that are of interest in we getting the juice for the squeeze. I noticed Reynolds, I guess, is going to have an increase in the pay program portion of their academic hours charges, and, I guess I'm trying to figure out, is that coming from the state to Reynolds to localities, or is that generating from Reynolds operating requirements? And again, what's the juice for the squeeze that our residents get out of that? So, just a couple comments from me on that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may respond quickly. Bob, I think I agree with you on the taxes. I don't hear anybody saying that they'd want to increase the tax. My point was we proposed a 5-cent decrease in the budget, and I would look at a 4% decrease instead to fill this gap, just so I can have something to show where it comes from. I think I would like the county administrator to come back with where that, if there's additional funds, where he would propose it could come from, and in terms of maybe revenue numbers. But I would just say, I'm not here, before we did the 5-cent decrease, I wasn't hearing from my constituents that they wanted the property tax decreased either. But it is high relative to other communities, so I support trying to pare it down. But again, I was just offering.
Yeah. No.
My suggestion is what I would look as a priority. If those are my two choices, I hope that's not the choice, because I would like to see the 5-cent decrease.
And again, I don't think that changing that is possible because it's
Because
being
it has
advertised.
advertised.
Yes,
Without us re-advertising it.
that's correct.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's, again, goes back to my point. I probably should have brought this stuff up weeks ago, but of course, we only heard the school budget tonight for the first time.
Mr.
Anyway,
Chair.
thank you.
On the revenue numbers, I think we've met and pushed them as far as staff is comfortable pushing them. If the board is comfortable pushing them a little bit further, certainly welcome to that. I think at the end of the day, you got to figure out what priority you're trying to fund. And if the school priority is there are other priorities that we didn't put in either. I have about 20 more firefighters that we're not funding that are in the long-term plan. There are other things that are trade-off and considerations, and so we can reprioritize some of our needs to take care of the school needs, or if the board's comfortable pushing the revenues a little bit, that's an option as well.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would just say, before we try to find where the money comes from, let's make sure this board is in agreement with trying to fund this. Well, let's do that first.
I think that's
I'm not
absolutely
sure that
necessary.
we do.
Yeah, necessary. That and the salary component I was talking about too. Yeah, we have to make sure that's what, obviously, goes nowhere if the board doesn't support one or the other or either or both. Yeah.
Just say it.
And I agree with Mr. Minnick's comment on Reynolds. They're increasing the amount we pay per student, per credit hour, I suppose. And when I look at their capital request, it states that it's amount based on the Master Site Infrastructure Project Plan. These funds will support improvement projects such as classrooms and science laboratories at the Parham Road campus. I don't know how many of our students attend the Parham Road campus, but
More than attend Goochland campus.
Yeah, okay.
Let us bring this one back to you,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, because we actually have a master agreement with the
Right.
community college. Some of these others we don't. And so as they spread their costs, their agreement's a little different than, I'll just pick on Meals on Wheels. It's a more of a true contribution to offset an overall operating cost. The community college is one of the few. We have an MOU with Monica, but some of these others we don't actually have contractual agreements with. The community college we actually have a relationship with, and there is some cost-sharing component to it. So if we want to tweak either that one or any of the others, let us make sure we have it rooted in if there is any agreement of any nature.
All right. Any further discussion on this topic? If not, the next item is appointments. We have one appointment or reappointment of Larry Prophet to the Recreation Advisory Commission.
And Mr. Chairman, I move that we reappoint Larry Prophet, and I've communicated with him. He's very willing to serve. He's done a great job, and he's willing to continue. So I move for his reappointment as presented in the agenda.
We have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Larry, for re-volunteering. Been on for a while. He's a good member of that board. So now we will adjourn to the GLE dinner and return here at 7 p.m. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our 7 o'clock meeting tonight. I'd like to call to order our 7 p.m. session for March 5th. Before we start the public comments, there are several hearings that were scheduled for tonight, and the applicants have requested deferrals. So we're going to process those before we move on to the agenda, and before the citizen comment period in case anybody wants to speak on those topics. So the first hearing that's requested a deferral is the RZ 2018-00010, an application filed by Tuckahoe Bridge LLC. And they have requested a deferral, and we have looked at our dates, and the date that it fits best in is June 4th of 2019. Board members, any discussions on the deferral? We had a discussion at 3 o'clock on them and actually voted on them, but we felt that since the hearings were scheduled for 7 o'clock, we would kind of repeat it now. So if we have no discussion on that one referral, one deferral, I would accept the motion to defer it to June 4th of 2019.
Board members, I just want to explain. I know you guys did that this afternoon. It was my error. I had recalled in the past that you had announced a deferral in your afternoon session and did not realize that had happened with an announcement, but then you actually voted in the evening session. And so when Ms. Hunter and I were speaking over dinner, she corrected me as to the procedure that you typically follow. So this afternoon, I should not have had you vote on them, and that's why we're asking to have the motions again this evening. So my apologies to you that you did take a vote this afternoon, but it's more in keeping with our advertisement and our practice to do it this evening. That's why Mr. Alvarez has brought the motion, asking for a motion again.
Ms. McGee,
it's my mistake.
no need for apologies. We're all a team. We should have just asked Joanne. Okay, so do we have a motion to defer?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we defer RZ 2018-0010, application filed by Tuckahoe Bridge LLC to June 4th meeting, 7 p.m. Right?
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions? The motion carries.
And Mr. Chairman, I believe the other one is RZ 2018-0011. It's application filed by Reed Marsh LLC for requesting a zoning reclassification of property right across from where we're sitting in District 3. I believe we previously moved to that one to the same date as well, June 4th.
No, we moved that one to May 7th.
May 7th, my correction, yes, thank you, May 7th. So that's my motion.
Your motion, do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to move the LLC, the Reed Marsh LLC request to May 7th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions, motion carries. And the last one is actually an ordinance change to allow or to implement the process for the school buses to carry cameras and for how to track violations of folks who run the stop sign on school buses. And we were not totally ready to get that introduced, so we have agreed to move that one also to June 4th. So could we have a motion for, that was, let me find it.
June 4th as well.
Right.
That's item one.
Yeah.
Chairman, I move the public hearing, the first one on the agenda, number 3050, ordinance to add section 9-27 to allow the installation and operation of a video monitoring system on division school buses, that we approve the movement of that one to June 4th as well.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions, motion carries. So those three hearings will be deferred as presented. So at this point, in the agenda, I would like to go ahead and open the citizen comment period. Anyone wishing to speak on items that are not on the agenda, which could be those items that we just deferred, please come up. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and give us your name and address for the record.
On yes, no,
Yes.
I guess, sorry.
Yes.
Amanda Kowalski, 2938 Stone Creek Drive, Sandy Hook, Virginia. District 2, right down the road from Manny. I had sent him some paperwork. I don't know if he had forwarded it to anyone, so I do have copies. If anyone would like to read along as I'm kind of speaking. This is about the reestablishment of a county-wide purchase of development rights program through the Virginia Office of Farmland Preservation. I do have, I'll just leave these up here if anyone wants to read along
Give them
or
to
give them to
Ms. Piskewicz.
kind of hoping for a more exciting meeting, but for you all, you know.
We weren't.
I won't take personal that everyone left. Just going to read a little bit. First and foremost, thank you for the time and allowing the voices and opinions of the citizens of Goochland County to be heard. You can all be commended on your accessibility to your constituents and your willingness to listen to the needs of your citizens. As a county that has on the main page of its comprehensive plan website a picture of a picturesque pasture and hillside, and whose main goal in the 2035 comprehensive plan is to, quote, to support a diverse and stable agricultural and forest space that contributes to the county's rural character, scenic quality, natural environment, and physical health, there is no greater need now than to reestablish a farmland preservation purchase of development rights program in Goochland County. With an increase of over 2,600 building lots in Goochland County in 2018, it would be the best interest of the leaders of this community and its citizens to counterbalance this growth and loss of farmland with reestablishment and funding of a purchase of development rights program. Well, I can hear your main objective now. How do we, as good stewards of our taxpayers' money, pay for this program? Previously, Goochland County had appropriated a certain dollar amount from the overall budget. This has its definite advantages, including a reliable revenue stream. This, however, based upon my conversations with certain board members, doesn't seem to be something that this board would fund with an appropriated amount, at least not at this time. What may be more of an appropriate way of funding a purchase of development right conservation program would be to allocate any rollback taxes from land taken out of ag use and put into other uses, such as commercial or residential. This would essentially balance out development with conservation. I did list 2 recent examples of land taken out of agricultural use. Drive Shack, the rollback tax was around $52,000. Fool's Gold, the solar farm, was around $5,000. In addition to any funds allocated towards a PDR program, the state of Virginia, through the Office of Farmland Preservation, has a dollar-for-dollar match program. The purpose of providing a funding match is to assist local PDR programs in conserving more farmland than with just their own funding. In 2018 alone, $308,076.17 in state funds were awarded to 5 localities in Virginia. If there is money out there for farmland preservation, I believe the citizens of this county deserve a board that will preserve this funding. If other localities are benefiting, why shouldn't Goochland County? I ask that you seek and appoint a designated group, i.e. Planning Commission, Agricultural District Community, or a specific PDR-specific specific committee that can manage and administer a successful PDR program for the county. As shown tonight, and as you are well aware, we have many citizens who are engaged, knowledgeable, and willing to preserve the rural character of our county. Let's all work together and think outside the box to keep Goochland the well-rounded rural county that we all love and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kowalski. I think you're leaving something. No? Maybe not.
Not mine, but
Okay.
I think
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak? Oh, there he is. I was looking for you in the back. Didn't realize you had moved.
Moving targets are hard to hit, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jonathan Lyle. I am one of the Soil and Water Conservation Directors for Monacan. And at the end of your 3 o'clock session, I did share with you a photocopy from the Virginia Farm Bureau magazine about what is up with the watershed implementation plan, which is a function of the Bay Act, which is EPA. And what I like about this is it actually is in English, and you can somewhat understand what they're looking to do. What I want to point out to you is that, well, with the WIP 3, it is a public comment period is going to open up next month in April. And then the final, I guess, report or response from Virginia will go to the Environmental Protection Agency in August. And this all deals with phosphorus, sulfur, and sediment going into the bay, and what Virginia, under the Bay Act, is required to do, hit certain benchmarks and bogeys. I want to again compliment the board for allowing or designating Ms. Bird as a liaison to the Monacan District. She has helped us quite a bit in just understanding what these bogeys are. And I want to point out that from an agricultural perspective, we're on track. We are meeting or exceeding what our requirements are. But in the Bay Act, urban runoff, septic systems, and also wastewater facilities. Now, we're not an MS4, we don't have wastewater facilities, but there is sort of a thread that as more development takes place in the county, there is going to be more urban runoff. And then most of the county still is on septic systems, and those things do fail on occasion. And so that is also an area of perhaps attention or activity that could benefit from. I am colorblind, Ms. Beskowitz, so I don't see any colors there. So.
We don't buy that anymore.
Yeah, but I did want to say that for your reading pleasure, there is activity going on. There is public comment opportunity. Public does include the county, so if there are points that the county wants to share, that eventually will get up to the Environmental Protection Agency, next month would be the time to do it. But again, Ms. Bird is working closely with us. The ag industry, ag community is hitting its marks so far as livestock exclusion, just cover crops and other types of phosphorus and other types of, I guess we'll just say fertilizer or nutrient additions that are not hurting it. I'm going to switch real quick because at the end of your 3 o'clock session, there was a discussion on the budget. And my fellow directors probably wouldn't appreciate it, but I do, and I'm still colorblind, that if there needs to be a reduction in the support that you're given to Monacan because of some of the needs in what I call the big 3, which is first responders or public safety, transportation, and education, we would figure a way to get our job done if we were not part of the budget or if you need to make adjustments in our budget. We do like to think we contribute to the county, but public safety, transportation, education are important also. And then also, final comment, I have continually thought you folks subsidize the county with the hours that you put in for the $1,000 a month that you currently draw in salary. I've asked a number of you, do you time track? How many hours do you put in? And I know my first job, because I'm old, was $2.70 an hour, and I think that you folks probably are earning less than that. So I would be amenable and would encourage you to consider at least cover your expenses. $1,000 a month for what you folks have accomplished over the last 7.5 years is it's a bargain. And so I would not want to see future board members not have at least their expenses covered. And I think the light went off. I'm not sure, so I'll sit down.
Thank you, Mr. Lyle. Anyone else? No public comment? Okay, I'll close the citizen comment period. So the first item on our agenda is an application filed by Charles and Joyce Hayden. Ms. Hunter, will you take us through it?
Good evening, members of the board. Joanne Hunter, Director of Community Development. The first public hearing this evening is RZ 2018-09, which is an application filed by Charles and Joyce Hayden to rezone approximately 17.87 acres from A1 to RR, which is our agricultural general district, to residential rural. Property is located generally in the western portion of the county at 3565 Haydensville Fife Road. This is the comprehensive plan map. The white areas, you can see that the majority of the area is designated rural enhancement area. You can see the blue area that's just designated, that's just south of this property. The blue is designated public or county-owned property. That is the Western Convenience Center. This property and all the surrounding properties are zoned A1 agricultural. Here is the aerial photo. There is one existing house on the property. It's located towards the northern edge of the property with lots of frontage along Haydensville Fife Road. You can see the convenience center to the south. There is a building permit for that structure that I just referenced. It is for a 5,740 square foot residence. The property is not completed yet. However, the applicant is actively working to finalize the structure. This is the structure here. Why they have to go through this zoning process? When a parent tract in the agricultural district has previously subdivided and all of their by right cuts have been taken, the only way they can get further division of the property is to go through a rezoning request. This is typically to an RR zoning. The RR zoning allows minimum lot sizes of 5 acres, and it is an appropriate designation in the rural enhancement area. So this is how the applicant is proposing to subdivide the property. As I indicated, it's a 17-acre parcel. The 10-acre parcel to the north is where the house under construction is located, and then the 7.87 would be the new lot, so this would create one additional lot with this rezoning request. The county's development impact policy does not apply to cases consisting of one additional lot. Therefore, this would not invoke our development impacts policy. There was a community meeting held back in early December. Ms. Lascalette and 2 adjoining property owners attended that meeting, and no neighbors had any concerns with the request. The Planning Commission did approve the request on February 7th at their public hearing, and no one spoke at the public hearing. As typical with most of these RR zonings, that when all the by right splits are taken and they go through this process, a proffer has been offered by the applicant that no further subdivision of the 10 acres would be allowed without going through another zoning process. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Ms. Hunter? No. Thank you, Ms. Hunter. Does the applicant wish to speak?
Subdivided into two parcels. Cut and dry like that.
Does it need to read the proffer? No, okay, good. All right, any questions for the applicant? Thank you. I'll call you back if we need you. At this time, I will open the public hearing on this. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this case, please step forward. Going once, going twice. Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Any discussion, questions? If not, I will take a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of zoning case RZ 2018-00009, application filed by Charles and Joyce Hayden, requesting the rezoning application.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Budescu, would you call the roll?
Mr. Lumpkins.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Minnick.
Yes.
Ms. Lashlet.
Yes.
Mr. Alvarez.
Yes. You have your rezoning? Ms. Honor, next item.
Yes. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. The next public hearing and final public hearing is a conditional use permit, CU 2019-01, that was filed by Beverly Thurston. It's actually a request for 2 conditional use permits in one application. The first one is for a short-term rental on hosted, and the second request is for a wedding and event center. The property is about 31 acres, and it's located at 2151 Shepherdtown Road, which is just to the east of the courthouse area. The property is designated rural enhancement areas on the comprehensive plan, as well as all the other surrounding properties along Shepherdtown Road. Also, those properties are all zoned agricultural A2. You can see a little bit of RP, that is the rear of Breeze Hill. And just to give you some perspective with what's been happening in this area, so the RP here, which is at the top of the screen, that is the back of Breeze Hill. This property here, this upside L-shaped property, that's the Kaspari Lee property. About 6 months ago, the board approved an event center for that fund. That was for weddings and events up to 200 people. And then this property right here is Ms. Pond's property. And about 5 or 6 months ago, around the same time, you also approved an on-hosted short-term rental for that property. So this one is another similar use in the same area. This is the aerial of the property. It is a farmed property. There's a number of barns and horse apparatus and buildings on the property. There are 2 dwellings on the property. In the agricultural district, for lots that are greater than 25 acres, you're allowed to have 2 dwellings. This is the property that would have both of the CUP uses in there, the short-term rental on hosted, as well as the place of public assembly. And then here is the house that's the applicant resides in. So this is just a blow-up of that area that you can see. So this would be the structure or home that would be used for the bed and breakfast and the event facility. This would be the applicant's residence. She lives there actively on the property. And then you can see there's a number of barns and other structures on site. Just to remind you again what the short-term rental on hosted, because it is sort of an unusual term, but that's one we came up with about a year ago when we addressed transient lodging. So the short-term rental on hosted means that it's a dwelling where they can rent out the entire house for sleeping or lodging for less than 30 days, and nobody else lives in that property. It is not owner occupied. The applicant will be living on the property, but not in that structure. If she was doing it within her house, it would not require a CUP. It's because it's she's not occupying it, and it's in a separate dwelling, and they're renting out the entire dwelling. So the applicant apparently has a 2-phase approach that she wants to start originally with the short-term rental on hosted. At that time, there would be no site or building improvements required. The occupancy for these short-term rentals are based on the sewer capacity. The building code requires that no more than 10 people can be using one of these without having to meet hotel requirements of having lots of sprinkler systems and fire rating and things like that. If they stay under 10, it's still considered a residence. However, this property, based on the sewer capacity, the current occupancy would be 4. They always have the potential that they could upgrade their sewer and get up to that maximum 10 number, but based on their sewer capacity, they can have no more than, would not be able to have more than 4 residents stay overnight in the facility. Once the short-term rental is up and running, they have more interest in doing the public assembly use in the same structure. That would be in their phase 2. During that phase, they will need to make some improvements to the property. However, they are somewhat limited. They would need to have handicap accessibility parking and additional parking spaces. The CUP conditions state that, well, this is not a condition, but the applicant has indicated that most of the activities will take place indoors. There is a CUP condition that no event can exceed 20 people. So this is a very small scale, more of like places where people can have meetings and quilting meetings and things like that. It's not really the large weddings or that sort of events. But no new buildings would be planned for the public assembly use either. That would be held in the structure. And we are recommending with the conditions a 5-year CUP approval for both uses. So we did have a community meeting that was held back in December 19th. There is one neighbor who attended, and there was general discussion about the other CUPs that had recently been approved in that area. However, there was no concerns about the 2 uses. At the February Planning Commission meeting, the request was approved with a 5-0 vote, and no one spoke at the public hearing. So for these, I'm going to review the conditions with you because they are the 2 uses. The first 9 conditions are going to be related to the short-term rental on hosted, and then the remaining conditions are related to the place of public assembly, and then there's 2 at the end that reference both of them. So with the short-term rental on hosted, these are similar conditions that we've used on other properties that have gotten the same permit for this type of use. So number 1 is that it's basically giving them the right to operate this as a short-term rental on hosted. Maximum overnight occupancy, as I had stated in the presentation, that right now it's limited to 4. However, if they did get health department approval for up to 10, they could do that without coming back through this process. They would just need to get the approval from the health department. A smoke detector and carbon monoxide detector would be placed in the structure. They'd have to provide emergency vehicle access to the use. Sound, no amplified sound is prohibited. Outside, you cannot have that. And there should be no outdoor music after 10 o'clock p.m. These are all conditions that we've used on other ones. No trespassing. We like them to put, because people are coming to the property and they may be walking around and there's concerns by neighbors in previous cases if they were wandering on their property. So we do ask them to put no trespassing signs along their boundaries so the people who are staying there know where they can walk and where they can't walk. The property shall maintain a residential appearance. Guests shall not hunt or discharge firearms. And then the applicant, when they rent the property, they have to provide notice of all those conditions. That's what number 9 says. So those are all the conditions for the short-term rental. These next series of conditions are for the place of public assembly. Again, these are similar conditions that we've pushed on other properties such as Bandits Ridge and some of the other places of public assembly. So this number 10 is that the use, they're allowed to have the place of public assembly for dinners, group instruction, social events, or similar activities. The conceptual plan, which was shown as part of that presentation, we would generally conform to that where it showed where the parking areas would be. The applicant can apply for a rural plan of development for that place of public assembly use. A minimum of 5 parking spaces serving the CUP activity shall be provided and maintained. That's based on the occupancy of 20. Access roads shall be constructed and maintained in accordance with the Goochland Fire and Rescue standards. 1 detached sign, not more than 20 square feet in area, is permitted for the CUP activity. Approval of a lighting plan shall be required before they install any exterior lighting. The limit on the number of guests for the place of public assembly would be limited to 20 people. There can be no more than 2 CUP activities per day. The hours of operations for those activities would be Monday to Saturday from 8 to 10 and Sunday 8 to 9. No amplified music and no outdoor music after 10 p.m. If there's going to be alcohol at any of the public assembly events, then they have to meet all the requirements of the Virginia Department of Alcoholic Beverage and Control. No fireworks, and then annually, a schedule of events would be submitted to the zoning administrator, and then at monthly, they will usually give us a list of what's coming up so that if somebody calls, we know what activities are going on. And the last 2 conditions would apply to both of the uses, the short-term rental on hosted and the place of public assembly, and that would be a 5-year expiration date, so this would expire in April 2024, and then our standard transfer or lease of the property, the conditions being continued over. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about those, either one of the CUP requests.
Questions for Ms. Hunter? Mr. Lumpkin?
Real quick, with that last condition, 25, I think it's pretty straightforward, but I just want to make sure. So if the applicant does sell or leases her primary property, that doesn't disrupt the CUP for the term if we approve it?
Correct, they just have to transfer,
They just have to make some notifications?
yes. And they need to notify the planning office so that we can make sure we meet with the new ownee or leasee and review the conditions with them.
Thank you. That's all.
And that's generally just education. We do that on all the CUPs, Mr. Lunkins.
Right, I just wanted, yeah, thank you. And I want to make sure that it didn't, we rarely have a situation where the CUP would go away if they sold or leased, right?
The CUP runs with the land.
Correct. So, and in this case, for the limited time that if we approve it as
Correct.
presented. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Peterson?
Just for clarification, you've mentioned kind of 2 CUPs, and is this one conditional use permit with 25? Okay, so that if there were any of these 25 that fell afoul, it's all under one permit, it's not really
Right.
2 separate? Okay, just clarification.
Two requests under one application
Rolled
and
into
one
one
permit.
application, one permit. Thank you, thank you.
Ms. Hunter, I have a question. The other CUPs we've approved around this one, what was the timeline we set on those?
The time limit for
Yep.
it, both of those were, I know the special event was 5 years, and I did not pull the ponds condition, but I imagine that was a 5-year also. It depends on whether we consider it a low impact or a high impact use, but I think because it was a first time thing, it would probably have been a 5 years, but I could verify that if you'd like.
Well, I don't know if anybody else would like to know that, but, okay. Any other questions for Ms. Hunter?
One other, Mr.
Go
Chairman. So, Ms. Hunter, this is a pretty small operation. Maybe the applicant's okay with this, but I'm just thinking events of 20 people. I mean, I've had 20 people in my house for a party that, I mean, it's just a tiny a group of people to actually send you a list. It seems like a lot of administrative work, and that's just my opinion. Maybe the applicant's okay with it.
This is what the applicant came in with. They had always indicated 20 people that this is her home. I don't think she wants more, but you could probably ask her.
No, I'm not questioning the number. I'm questioning her giving you a list of the events
Okay,
for no more than 20 people. That's all.
Okay.
But if everybody's okay with it, I am too.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to come up and speak, please?
Good evening. I just want to thank you for considering this conditional use permit, and if you do have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Could you state your name? just for-
Beverly Thurston,
for the
and
record.
the owner at 2151 Shepherdtown Road.
Any question for Ms. Thurston?
I don't.
Do you have any concerns with the conditions that have been
No,
placed?
I think these were pretty much hammered out with staff, and I think it's what staff was saying was fairly normal. And so, as you say, it's going to be we see it as a small operation.
Thank you. Any questions?
Ms. Thurston, just, I could have asked Ms. Hunter, I didn't. How far is your property there on Shepherdtown Road? How far is it to Mannequin Road from your property?
To Mannequin Road, it's probably it's at least 10 miles or 13 miles.
Why did I say Mannequin?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. You need a map?
Oh, to Maiden's Road.
I
It's
guess
four
I'm
miles.
thinking of some other things.
Yeah,
It's how
4
far?
miles.
4 miles from your
Yes.
property to Maiden's?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I drive it all the time, so I
Yeah,
do
no,
know.
you know.
Well, actually, that might not be right. It might be less than that. It's probably 2 miles
Okay,
from my house, my driveway on Shepherdtown up to Maiden's.
to Maiden's Road.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Thurston? Thank you, Ms. Thurston.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or anything before I open? Okay. So at this time, I'll open the public hearing on this case. If you want to speak in support or against this conditional use permit, please come forward and state your name and address, and you'll have about 3 minutes. Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Any further discussion, folks?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve application, conditional use permit application 2019-0001 as presented with the conditions as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Budesky, would you do a roll call vote?
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Minnick?
Yes.
Ms. Lachlet?
Yes.
Mr. Lumpkins?
Yes.
Mr. Rao?
Yes. You have your conditional use permit. At this point, we are done with our agenda, but before we adjourn, and I've got some other, the adjournment comments, but I would like to introduce, if all the folks who are here from the Goochland Leadership Enterprise, if you wouldn't mind standing up so people can see you. Thank you for inviting us to dinner with you tonight. Sorry we couldn't stay very long. I hope anybody else here and at home watching, GLE is a great experience, and you learn a lot about the county and how the county functions. I think all of us have participated in it at some point, a few years ago maybe. So thank you for joining, and I hope you'll stay in touch with the county over in the future. Thank you. So at this point, and I would like to thank Peter for bringing the folks out, and also remind people, when do you start the? We start in October of next year. In October you start. When do you start taking applications? Anytime? So see him before you leave if you would like to participate. Like I said, it's a great program. It doesn't take a lot of time, and you learn a lot about the county and how it functions. So, okay. Mr. Budesky?
I apologize. Unfortunately, I'm the bearer of bad news. Those of you that had purchased your tickets to the Siegel Center Saturday, the boys went down tonight, but fought hard, and should be congratulated for a very proud season. But unfortunately, Dr. Rayleigh just texted and said they didn't pull this one out, but really worked hard to get this far. Bulldog basketball, for those of you that were wondering what I'm talking about.
And that's the first time they've made it to the semifinals in the state, so it's a great achievement. Sorry, I just got a piece of candy. So at this point, unless anybody has any new business, or I will go ahead and adjourn the Board of Supervisors as follows. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, March 12th at 3 p.m. for our capital improvement plan review. And it'll be followed by a work session with the school board. So we'll have both boards together to work through details of the budget. That meeting is open to the public. The next meeting would be on April 2nd at 3 p.m. for a regular business meeting, and 7 p.m. for the budget public hearings. We've been going over the last few weeks, going over the budget numbers. At that meeting is when we'll present the budget again, and you can speak on any of the budget numbers. Then on April 16th, at 3 p.m., we will meet to adopt the budget. So once we've held the hearings, we'll meet on the 16th and adopt the budget for the schools, capital improvement plan, utility rates, and tax rates. And the meeting is at 3 and at 7 p.m. And again, all of our meetings are open to the public, so I hope to see you at some of those meetings. So at this point, I will adjourn the Board of Supervisors for March 5th. Thank you all for